concern about Elon Musk being the...
A federal judge has issued a temporary restraining order against a Trump administration effort to freeze funding for federal grants and other programs. NPR's Elena Moore reports the court put a temporary stay on a funding memo issued and then rescinded by the Office of Management and Budget last week.
The order from federal judge Lauren Ali Khan says that the administration is blocked from implementing the memo or, quote, reinstating under a different name. It also directs the OMB, which is part of the executive branch, to provide the court with a status report on its compliance by Friday. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the latest federal court order. But after rescinding the OMB memo last week, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stressed that it would not deter the administration from doing its work. Elena Moore, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 43 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. United States Department of Justice has formed a multi-agency task force to investigate allegations of anti-Semitism at U.S. universities. It is a step that some say will keep Harvard and other universities under a federal microscope. Formed yesterday, the task force is one of several measures that President Donald Trump ordered federal agencies to implement as part of his executive order last week, which urged a crackdown on anti-Semitism complaints on college campuses. A press release from the White House says the task force will be led by the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, but will also include representatives from the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, and other unspecified agencies. And the nonprofit Nantucket Animal Rescue is awaiting test results after finding dozens of dead birds washed up on island beaches late last week. Nantucket Animal Rescue co-founder Rain Harbison tells our sister station CAI that volunteers from her organization patrol the beaches regularly.
We collected birds from 3 different beaches, and we ended up testing almost 100 birds just from those 3 beaches. Most of them were on the North Shore.
Nantucket Animal Rescue co-founder Blair Perkins noted that there are other diseases that could have caused this mortality event. Test results for avian flu are expected at some point this week. In sports, the Bruins host Minnesota at the Garden tonight. Celtics are at Cleveland. The Beanpot Hockey Final set for next Monday. No, Northeastern is not in it. It's BC versus BU. 38 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions, committed to taking travelers deeper into the wonders of planet Earth. Each expedition cruise is guided by a diverse team. natgeoexpeditions.com/cruises.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are streaming live from the Boston Public Library at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and Friday. And I believe the governor's coming on Friday, isn't she?
Friday, 1 to 2, she'll be here.
1 to 2. Maura Healey will be here to take our questions and yours. And on Thursday, we'll be back in Brighton, but Senator Markey will zoom in from Washington on what's going on down there in Washington, which is obviously quite a bit. Good morning, Jim.
And the mayor, who now has an opponent as of 6 minutes ago, I think his press conference started. And we'll hear about that from Adam Riley, Josh Kraft's press conference. The mayor will be with us next Tuesday from 11 to 12. Let me start with good news, because we never have good news. This is good news for all you anti-vax people out there. One of your own is on his way to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. The guy, his first cousin, Caroline Kennedy, described as a predator who has misrepresented, lied, and cheated his way through life, just got the vote of every Republican on the Senate Finance Committee.
Including Senator Collins. Do we have Senator Collins?
I don't think she's on that committee.
Is she going to vote for him?
Cassidy, who is a doctor from Louisiana, who struggled, he said, with his position on vaccines, voted for him. The full Senate will vote, I assume, to approve him next week because they're too scared to stand up to Donald Trump.
I just have to point out that RFK Jr. repeatedly lied about what he said, and then they played him back the transcript, or they showed the transcript,
with
or
him
they read from the transcript. So he lied over and over again. But, you know, I guess it's
good enough.
It's no problem.
In any case, that wasn't what our original topic was going to be. But if you want to weigh in on RFK's apparent ascension to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services next week with this vote today, that's fine. But we're going to start the show also with our new shadow government. And the man who leads it, another pretty incredible character, Elon Musk. President Trump has placed him at the helm of this quasi-governmental entity, as you know, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's part of the White House, not a cabinet agency or an actual department. So Musk required no Senate confirmation hearing. He answers to no one but Trump. And under the guise of government efficiency, end quote, DOGE has gained access to the Treasury Department's payment systems, responsible for processing trillions of dollars of payments every year. Home addresses, medical histories, other sensitive data. And according to the White House press secretary herself, nobody knows whether the DOGE team has security clearance to do any of this. So, by the way, Heather Cox Richardson referred to this as a coup, which I think is appropriate. So what do you make of this? These government efficiency cowboys? Are you happy with this? Musk and his team of 19 to 24-year-old boys who are doing this.
Yeah,
Are
one
you
of them
at all?
was Northeastern. He might still be at Northeastern. I guess
Yeah, I
he's
didn't
not
know
at
that. You
Northeastern
told
if
me.
he's working hard for the DOGE
And
operation now.
Whether you're a Trump voter or not, how do you feel about this this rather sudden and extreme dismantling of parts of the federal government? Apparently, the Education Department, as you heard on the NPR News, is on the list for today. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about Musk running wild? Joan Vanaki suggests this is what the Trump voters wanted. Maybe you did. Give us a buzz, 877-301-8970.
Well,
can I do one more thing before we start?
Yeah, I have a tax man question for you, Jim.
Well, I'm your tax guy.
That's
I want to
right.
just quote a wise senator from Kentucky, Connecticut, Chris Murphy, who we've had on the show when he wrote his book about guns. He tells NPR's Morning Edition this morning that the U.S. public may not recognize the ongoing constitutional crisis if they see Democrats regularly collaborating with the people who created the crisis, the Republicans. He says the focus has to be on Republicans right now, why they have been completely and utterly silenced, meaning in the face of Trump. I do not want all the pressure to be on Democrats to figure this out when Republicans should care just as much about democracy as Democrats do. He's saying no cooperation so that the focus is on the unconstitutional behavior, according to him. And he says if we cooperate with him, essentially we're normalizing this kind of behavior. I happen to agree with him. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Okay, well, here's my taxman question
yes,
for you,
I'm here
since you
for
are
it,
an
yeah.
expert on all things
I'm
having
an
to do
excellent on all
with
things tax,
taxes.
yes.
If these Doge people,
Yeah.
Elon Musk and the squad of 19 to 24-year-olds engineers, if they have all this access to the Treasury Department, Social Security information, tax information, that means that they could find out about the investments of all these senators, the stock holdings of all these senators. They could look at your individual tax information if you were deemed to be an enemy, perhaps, of Donald Trump. They have that all in their hands now, is my
So is that a
understanding of
question?
this. Well, I guess, if...
Would you like me to answer the question?
Yeah, answer the question.
I don't know.
You
I
don't know?
know.
Well, I think
We do know
we
they
do
have.
know.
We do know they have access to payment systems of trillions and trillions of dollars of money, including the checks that go out to you and your family, your Social Security check, your mother or somebody is getting. And by the way, it is so
Your
obvious.
tax refund.
If anybody on the Democratic side had similar access, I assume Republicans, Trump voters, would be screaming bloody murder, and anybody who believes in privacy and that, I know it's sort of old hat, the Constitution, should be screaming now, but they're not. Democrats are screaming ineffectively, and the Republicans are doing crickets because every single one of them is totally afraid of Donald Trump coming after them. It's just a sorry state of affairs. We want your reaction to all this, including the unanimous Republican vote in the Senate Finance Committee for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. By the way, no one could be more wrong with political predictions than me. I thought there was zero chance Kennedy would get it. I thought there was zero chance Hegseth could be confirmed.
Tulsi
I thought there
Gabbard.
was zero chance Tulsi Gabbard could be confirmed. Susan Collins says she's now voting for him. She's meeting with Assad in Syria and denying that he was killing his people. She's a buddy of Vladimir Putin's, and she's going to get enough Republican votes to be director of national intelligence. And by the way, the reason that matters, I don't mean, I'll shut up after this,
Okay.
maybe. The reason that matters, if you're another country and you share intelligence information with the United States, which they do, to keep us safe and keep them safe,
Yep.
are you going to share information with a woman who has a relationship with people like Assad and Putin? The answer, of course, is no.
No, I think things are going very well, Jim. We're in good shape. Good shape. No problem. And,
What are the Democrats doing again? I forgot.
Well, I think Chris Murphy has a point.
I think he does, too.
I think, I don't know how Dr. Cassidy could vote for Bobby Kennedy Jr., who obviously was lying through his teeth over and over last week. But he's the guy that talked about how he had an 18-year-old patient who died because he couldn't get a hepatitis vaccine, which is now given to children when they're infants, which is a good thing. And he was so passionate about this, but I guess he's just rolling over on it. We'll see what Mitch McConnell does. He's a polio survivor. He's not running again for office. We'll see if
he did vote against Hexas, did he not?
He did vote against Hexas, and so did Murkowski, and so was Collins. So
now, he never votes against nominees when he had power to bring other Republicans with him, but now that he's not the leader of the Republicans in the Senate.
Maybe he's worried about his end of days time. Maybe he's thinking he should be a little bit less of a dishonest guy than he was before. But I don't know what to make of it. But it's a little, and what's the funny thing about yesterday is, you got to give it to Trump. We were all hysterical about the tariffs, right? Everybody's worked up into a frenzy about the tariffs. And apparently, these big negotiations, apparently this is the third time that thousands of troops, from Mexican troops, have been ordered to the border. 2019 when he was president, 21 when Biden was president, and now in 2025. So this is nothing new. And the fentanyl, according to the reporting I read this morning, that's brought to the United States, is not typically brought by impoverished migrants who are trying to get across the border. It's bought by American citizens who go into the United States to bring the drugs here. And the other thing that I thought was great is that one of the concessions that the Mexicans got from us, who knows if we'll pay any attention to it, is one of the problems with the Mexican cartels. One of the problems with the Mexican cartels. You know where their weapons come from?
United States.
Guns from the United States.
Well, that's one of the things that Claudia Scheinbaum said was also part of the deal.
So she said it would be helpful if the United States started shipping so many guns to these criminal killers in Mexico. It's like a big scam, but we all fell for it, and I guess maybe we'll be falling for this for Doge, I don't know, but it does seem like the FBI agents are very concerned because at least 30 of them have been fired or relocated already because they had the wherewithal to do their jobs, and like in the McCarthy era now, colleagues are asked to turn in other FBI agents who may have worked on the prosecutions of the January 6 rioters.
Two last things before we start. For those of you who are sitting there saying, okay, so they have all these Department of Treasury records, they're there, that sort of thing. Heather Cox Richardson, who's pretty broadly respected, called it the largest data breach in human history. Here's what Elizabeth Warren said. She wrote a letter to the new Secretary of the Treasury. I'm alarmed that as one of your first acts as Secretary, you appear to have handed over a highly sensitive system responsible for millions of Americans' private data and a key function of government to an unelected billionaire and an unknown number of his unqualified flunkies. So that's what her position is on that. And the question is, does anybody care? And I would argue the most prescient line maybe in American history, which I sadly think still applies. I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and wouldn't lose a vote or whatever he said. Do you think if they're the people, 49.8% of voters on November 5th who voted for Trump got to re-vote today, how many do you think he would lose of that 49.8%?
Probably
11 people?
Yeah, if that. We're like I said, we're in great shape here. We just have to keep calm and carry on. And
we got them right where we want them.
Got them right where we want them, exactly. Sheila in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, Sheila. Welcome to the show.
Hello there. Glad to talk about Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to call it multi-musking because he is now everywhere. I don't think he sleeps unless he does with his heels from the top to the bottom. He sleeps like a bat. But I have to say, it's scary on the X platform since Trump is in. I have never seen so many ads for MAGA hats, MAGA this, MAGA that. So he's also the minister of propaganda, I think. He owns those platforms, and it's getting kind of scary.
Well, I would also say that while Trump said yesterday in the Oval Office, he's got to run everything by me, et cetera, I would say it's probably the other way around. I think Musk is calling the shots here, and Trump is signing on because he's a transactional guy trying to figure out how he's going to make money from Elon Musk. And by the way, Sheila, thanks for the call. We didn't mention the other thing.
What?
Is there any discussion about whether or not this dismantling that Musk is leading has financial benefit for him and his zillions of contracts with the federal government and contracts to be with the federal government? Anybody care about that? You remember when Trump was first elected, Marjorie almost every day for about a week would say, he's violated the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution.
I thought somebody
How many
cared.
people cared about
Nobody
that?
cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared. They didn't care about the money his daughter was making in China and his son was making with these deals with the Saudis. Nobody seemed to care about anything. It's like a whole new world. You know, Emile Beauvais, whoever you say his name, he was one of Trump's lawyers in his many legal cases, which he managed to sneak out of.
Is he now the acting attorney general until Bondi gets in,
I
or
don't know
something
what he
like
is.
that?
He's somebody at the Department of Justice. He characterized the prosecution of the rioters on January 6th who tried to kill police officers, murder police officers. He characterized the prosecutions as a, quote, grave national injustice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, obviously Trump did too.
It's like everything is upside down.
Yeah.
It's like you're in Alice in Wonderland.
By the way, when Sheila said, who was making that bat line about, there was a story last week, which is not atypical when it comes to Musk, that he has been sleeping in his office, the Doge office, wherever it is, next to the West Wing or that, which is, you know, if that's what he wants to do, it's perfectly fine. In any case, Arthur in Salem, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling, Arthur. Welcome.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Just wanted to call in and give my 2 cents from what I'm hearing from Mr. Musk.
Yeah.
My career in the finance industry started in the audit department, so the whole notion of going into lots of data and detail with.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to do if you're going in there to inspect, you need a scope of what you're going to do, why are you going there, a audit program as to what is expected to be used to the analysis, and the actual procedures you're going to use. And that has to get approved before you start your work, not just, let the cowboys loose and go see what they can find.
Wait. It has to get approved according to who?
Oh, well, in the world of financial audit, it would be
right. Well, this is not the world of financial audit.
This is the Wild West.
Well, what I'm trying to offer is some form of standard that if somebody overseeing Musk approves what he's going to do, and that gets released to the public, so we know what he's going to do, not just out there fish hunting. You can either gain some comfort by it or, set the fires up even higher because he's not even going to tell you what he's going to do.
Well, Arthur, I'll make a deal. Next time I talk to Donald Trump, I'll explain the audit rules to him, and I'm sure he'll implement them with his buddy. Obviously, you're right. That's the way the world ordinarily works. By the way, it doesn't work that way at the Mass Legislature either. We'll talk about that a little later in terms of auditing. But those rules don't apply. Elon Musk is a total free agent, clearly able to do whatever he wants, wherever he wants, with the total imprimatur of the President of the United States. Arthur, thanks.
It's important to remember that a lot of the stuff that they're doing is illegal. It's against the law. But the problem is what happens in the interim between the time, thousands of FBI agents get fired and when they get to court. I mean, we have a story this morning from Forbes that talks about the American Federation of Government Employees and other unions sued the Treasury Department seeking to cut DOJ's access to Treasury data and all that. But we just saw how the courts delay. So, I mean, who knows? It could be 2035 before any of these cases get going. Why do courts start at 10 and at 4? They should start at 8 and at 6.
Why does the show start at 11 instead of 9?
Well, we don't have important matters,
Well, I would say we do, Marjorie.
We have a poem. We have a poem, Jim.
What is she talking about?
Why do
the judges leave at 3 some days? Some judges. What about that? Ask Nancy. Oh, by the way, we should say
she's going to be with us tomorrow.
Nancy Gertner, former federal judge, is going to be with us tomorrow. Nancy Gertner is working with Norm Eisen, who is an ethics guy, was a counsel to one of the impeachment committees in the House a couple of years ago. And Nancy is deeply involved in an effort resist these mass firings at the Justice Department, the FBI. We'll talk to John King about that at 1 o'clock and others. So Nancy's going to have some, Judge Gertner's going to have some really interesting stuff to share with us tomorrow.
Want to hear the sound from Chris Murphy?
Sure.
Our staff got it for us.
Great.
Here he is this morning on NPR's Morning Edition. This is Chris Murphy. He's from Connecticut. He's a big crusader, anti-gun crusader, because, of course,
great.
Sandy Hook happened in his state, talking about the ongoing constitutional crisis and saying the public may not recognize it if they see Democrats collaborating with Republicans.
I believe that Democrats should not support a single nominee, that we should not grant expedited process to any nominees until this crisis passes. I worry that the American public is not going to rise up against this seizure of power if they see Democrats collaborating with Republicans on the floor of the Senate on a regular basis to pass legislation or support nominees.
As I said, not only not a radical, well, it is sort of a radical idea, but it's a common sense idea if the Democrats want to focus the attention of the American people on the unconstitutional behavior of Donald Trump and his across the board support by these unpatriotic Republicans.
You know, here's a texter that says, if we presume people voted for Donald Trump because they're sick of government inefficiency and bloat, why can't Democrats accept this and put together a real and substantial plan with real ideas to attack this issue and bring it to the people so we can maybe go after the same goal in a not insane manner? You know, that's a great question, but how many times have you heard people talking about the waste, fraud, and abuse in government? You hear about it locally in Massachusetts. It's been a rallying cry. Remember the Barney Frank line about the problem with getting rid of waste and fraud?
It's marbled in.
It's marbled in. It's not like you can chop off a piece. And as many people have said, Texter, that if we were doing this in a sane way, it probably would be much less upsetting. But I don't think most people want to have, 5,000, and that's what they were talking about.
Well, how about shutting down USAID? This humanitarian aid to countries and mostly low-income people all over the world.
Well, you know what Elon Musk called it?
No.
He called USAID evil, a criminal network. Time for it to die. Yeah. They should put it in the wood chopper. Okay. That's what he had to say about USAID. And lots of people are employed by USAID. You know, when we had the federal government shut down a couple of years ago?
I remember that.
Remember how long people could go without a paycheck?
I remember that.
2 weeks.
We're going to take a break, Marjorie.
Well, before we take a break, I have a little poem I want to read.
You have a poem?
Yes. This is from Eve. A little protest poem for our times.
Oh, good.
With apologies to Dr. Seuss.
Please.
I do not like the fascist man. I do not like his spray-on tan. I will not listen when he speaks. I will not read the stuff he tweets. I will not stoop to rage and hate. I will not take his MAGA bait. His grinning patriotic bit, he really doesn't give a about the crowds who fill his halls. In truth, he really hates them all. His superficial MAGO credo only builds his fragile ego. So let's not even speak his name. It only builds his shallow fame. Let's take our outrage and our wrath and direct it down a different path.
That was fabulous.
Wasn't that good?
That was beautiful.
That was a pretty good one. Thank you. I think that was from Eve. Thank you very much. Okay, we're taking taking a little deep break, or a little brief break here, I should say.
What are we doing?
We're talking about Elon Musk.
I think we need a deep break, considering
6,
how bad
19 to 24-year-olds who have access to everybody's data all across the country. What could go wrong? The number's 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and broadcasting from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Alan Cumming, the writer, singer, actor, and host of the hit reality TV series The Traitors, which just kicked off Season 3, joins us to talk about not acting his age, not to mention his ever-expanding tartan wardrobe. Plus, New Zealand metal band Alien Weaponry is here ahead of their show at the Royale, and independent filmmaker and author John Sayles discusses his new novel. That's all on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the 2nd consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And MIT Federal Credit Union, helping members achieve their financial goals with savings account options, including high-yield money market accounts. Memberships open to the general public. More at MIT FCU, federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Thursday, when we're in Brighton, Senator Markey will join us from Washington. On Friday from 1 to 2, Governor Healey will be with us at the library live for Ask the Governor. And on Tuesday, back at the library, it is Ask the Mayor. Did I say 11 to 2? I did not. 11 to 12. Mayor Wu, who again, Josh Kraft, who is challenging her, had a press conference at 11 o'clock. Adam Riley, our colleague, is going to join us in the end of the 12 o'clock hour and give us an update on what the new mayoral candidate had to say. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump's coup, as Heather Cox Richardson calls it. Want to get your reaction to it at 877-301-8970. I want to hear what you're thinking also about the Senate Finance Committee breaking along party lines, every Republican voting to move the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the full Senate for confirmation as head of Health and Human Services. Jay in Charlestown, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Actually, I'm not good. What I feel like is that we're witnessing a complete evisceration of the U.S. government. The fact that they can control the Treasury and payments is almost more than a coup. It's like all of a sudden the keys to everything have been handed over. Like they could say, okay, you want to get a tax return? You need to pledge loyalty to Trump or Musk or whatever. Oh, let's just sell all this information to China. They can see who owes what, who can be compromised. I mean, it's totally crazy. And I think a lot of the language in legacy media, I'm not talking about you guys, but like New York Times, like they're not presenting this what it is. It's horrifying. And I don't know how we can stop it. Because
Jay, speaking of the New York Times, Paul Krugman, I don't know if he's retired or pushed out, left the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. Where was that interview with Krugman? Was it on NPR? I'm not sure. Somewhere, Paul Krugman is quoted as saying that his former paper, MSNBC, thank you, Jamie, is, quote, sane-washing Trump. So, Jay,
Margaret Sullivan talks about that all the time, too, Jay.
I absolutely agree with that. And like, you see the stuff that Chuck Schumer sending out yesterday on Twitter. It's like, oh yeah, your pizza is going to be more expensive during the Super Bowl because of tariffs. It's like, wait a second. We need to put out this. I mean, it's not even a fire. It's like an explosion that we need to. I don't know.
Well, Jay, Wired.com has got a great piece about who these little, this band of 19 to 24-year-olds, 6 of them, these engineers that are doing all this stuff, and they're calling up workers and asking them to go over the code they've written to justify their jobs at places like the General Services Administration. And it's really scary because I'm sure they're brilliant young coders, and I'm sure they are really good at what they're doing. They work for SpaceX. They work for Peter Thiel, a big buddy of Elon Musk's. As I said, this one kid just recently got out of high school and had been enrolled at Northeastern University. So I'm with you. I think the opportunities here for bribery, for coercion, for all sorts of nefarious things, that's what they've got. And I think it's pretty scary, too. I'm with you.
You have a final word, Jay?
One more thing on U.S. aid.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they were instrumental in fighting apartheid in South Africa back when Musk was living there. So I think he's settling a score personally, but that's why he's going after it.
I don't know about that, but I do know that it's not only something that is incredibly important to people who can't afford it throughout the world, but as people who know much more about this than I say, when we pull back from these humanitarian commitments, soft power, as Charlie Sennett described it as yesterday, who steps in but China to make sure that they satisfy the needs that we had been fulfilling? So it's a lose-lose proposition. Jay, thank you for an excellent call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Let me just say one more thing about the USAID thing. The line for those who supported Musk has been, there's fraud and abuse there. Everybody knows, supposedly, 3% of their grants have been shown to be fraudulent or some such thing.
Well,
the answer is go against it. You don't shut down a whole lot. What's that great silver line? It's like, what was the thing he was talking about? It was some tax cut.
When you're ripe, it's time to go?
No. He was talking about, it's like using a shotgun to the head to cure a headache.
Right.
And that's essentially what he's doing. There are no question there are inefficiencies and fraud that every elected official has talked about outing for years. The way you do it is not to destroy something that arguably is the best of this country. John in Westford, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. I have two major things about USAID. One is $5 billion that they gave of taxpayer dollars to the Maidan Revolution in Ukraine in 2014. That's been proven. The other one is the Ecosystems Alliance, who actually funded the Wuhan clinic, was paid through USAID.
Hey, John, can I tell you, John, let me just respond quickly. I don't know those to be true. I trust you. You're a good caller. And so my position would be freeze those. How much is that? $10 billion? Freeze that or whatever amount you talked about and let the rest of the humanitarian aid continue while you're investigating the things you're talking about. Do you support shutting down a whole operation to out those kind of problems?
Well, USAID, if you go through the list, it's nothing more than it's the biggest NGO CIA front in the world. That's all they do.
How about by the way? How about
a million?
How about their AIDS work? How about their AIDS work that saved thousands, if not millions, of lives?
I think it's 140 million.
How about that? How about that, John? Is that a plot, Marxist plot too?
No, not at all. No, but what I'm saying is it's just the money laundering for the government to overthrow countries. The Maidan Revolution was strictly funded, and Victoria Nuland had to confess to it in front of Congress.
Okay. Again, if you want to put a pause, to use the term they use in Washington, on spending that is questionable at best, you'll have our support. Don't shut down the whole thing. John, thanks for the call. By the way, our buddy Anand Girdadas said in the Ink yesterday, USA did fight apartheid. Musk is killing it. And Anand is a pretty reliable source.
Did John say that USAID was funding the Wuhan lab?
Yeah, he did. He did.
I don't know why China would need us to fund the
Well, I don't know, but let's
Wuhan
assume for argument's sake it is. Then obviously investigate that and do a temporary pause rather than, as they say, drowning the baby or whatever that horrible expression
Baby out with
is.
the bathwater.
Whatever it is.
Anne in Lincoln. Thank you
Hi,
for
Anne.
calling.
You got a minute. Take it.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Quick points, I hope. I'm shocked we're not having major protests in the streets. When you think about what was going on in Israel before October 7th,
I'm so with
they were
you.
protests of massive sizes. And if you think back about what drove Putin crazy in the Eastern European countries, were those color revolutions, those huge protests in the streets that showed him that they were not with these authoritarian takeovers. And I agree, we are in the midst of the coup right now, today. And if I could say one more thing, I heard this morning, I can't remember who said it on television, but somebody said we need to be careful about protests if we have them, because that is exactly what Trump is hoping for in order to unleash his states of emergency.
Yeah, but I hear that, but that's not why there are no protests. There are no protests because we are a tweeting society. We tweet when we are upset. We don't take action. And by the way, Ann, thanks for the call. People don't remember it. They're wondering about what was going on in Israel prior to October 7th. It was Netanyahu's effort to totally undermine the judiciary because he was under legal attack, and the people of Israel and huge numbers were standing up. We don't stand up here. We complain and we tweet and whatever hell else we do. I couldn't agree with that caller more. We're done, Marjorie.
Okay, up next, we're going to talk with Trenni Casey about some sports. Trenni, of course, is NBC Sports Boston anchor. Talked about the Super Bowl, DEI, and the NFL. This incredible story about the owner of the New Orleans Saints and an employee there helping out the Catholic Church in New Orleans to, quote-unquote, manage a child sex abuse mess. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The world takes you outside your borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble.
We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stay with you for a lifetime. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Global news and inspiring voices that will keep you on top of the world.
Listen each weekday.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Massachusetts Historical Society, presenting the Making History Gala with author Nathaniel Philbrick on March 11th at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. Tickets at masshist.org/gala. And Samet's Blackstone Associates, providing brand-focused strategy, content, cross-media design, and fundraising support to help mission-driven organizations build and deepen relationships. More at sametz.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. Thursday, while we're in Brighton, Senator Markey is going to zoom in from Washington. Friday, the governor, Maura Healey, is going to be physically here for an hour of Ask the Governor at 1 o'clock. And 11 o'clock to noon next Tuesday, it's Ask the Mayor, well, obviously with Michelle Wu. Joined now at the BPL desk by Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hey there, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So, Trenni Casey, I understand that some Pats fans are a little nervous that they're about to be left in the dust by the Chiefs, and they're rooting, therefore, for Philadelphia.
Actively rooting against the Chiefs, yes. Welcome to what the rest of the world endured, or at least the United States endured for 20 years with the Patriots. So here's the deal. The Kansas City Chiefs can do something on Sunday that no other team has ever done, which is win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. No team in the history of the Super Bowl has ever done that. So it would be quite the accomplishment. It would also mean 4 Super Bowls for Patrick Mahomes before he turns 30. So the sort of natural conversation down in New Orleans in the week leading up to going to New Orleans has been, can the Chiefs, can they jump the Patriots as the, greatest dynasty of all time? Is Patrick Mahomes, if you had one game to win, who would you take? Would you take Patrick Mahomes? Would you take Tom Brady? I actually still, and I think some people will probably be surprised by this, I think I'd still go Tom Brady, just because he's always a winner. Like, there's never a moment where he doesn't find a way to beat you.
Didn't he beat Mahomes twice in the playoffs, too?
He did. Yeah. He did.
And he in Tampa Bay when he was with the Buccaneers, right?
Yes.
Just not the Patriots.
So, yeah, right. He's done it over, Tom Brady did it over 2+ decades. So to me, that's still sort of the defining statistic or, whatever a record for them is that the Patriots won 6 Super Bowls over 2 different eras in football. But you cannot deny that what the Chiefs are doing or can do, because Jim's Eagles can beat them on Sunday.
Hometown team. I think it's a better team, actually.
The Eagles?
Yeah. But doesn't mean they're going to win because Mahomes is
Because Mahomes is great.
And Taylor Swift is still with
I was just going to say, did you read the ESPN story this morning?
No.
There's a rumor that there's a play for her where Mahomes is going to toss the ball to Kelsey, and he's going to throw the ball to Taylor Swift, and that would be the culmination.
And that would be the game winner.
Well, I think that'd be pretty great. You see her in pads.
But they have lasted a long time. I mean, could this be a record
Here
for
we
Taylor
go.
Swift?
I knew this was going to happen.
Listen, we would not, Marjorie, talk about a guy who had we never talk about men who have lots of girlfriends. Tom Brady had lots of girlfriends. Rob Gronkowski's had lots of girlfriends. If Taylor Swift wants to have 150 boyfriends over the course of her life and never marry, then I am for it.
We're just impressed that Kelsey must have something because it's lasted longer than usual.
There is something, I think, somebody I work with is sort of in the know in the music industry.
Oh, really?
And he did say that when he went to Milan this summer to see the Eras Tour, he met up with her manager and had lunch with with her manager. And the manager said this is the happiest that they've ever seen Taylor Swift.
Wow.
So there is something to say for that.
Did you guys both watch the Grammys Sunday night?
I went to bed at
She lost everything for which she was nominated, and her applause and congratulations to the winners at least appeared on television, admittedly, so genuine and so real and so whatever. It was really like a grown-up kind of thing. You know what I mean?
No, she's grown
happy.
Up since she used to date RFK Jr.'s son. Remember that?
She did?
Wait, which one?
I forget the kid's name.
No,
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr.'s son.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, I don't think I need. I don't think I remember.
That's why she bought the house in Rhode Island. Remember?
Yes, she has a whole song about it.
That was a long
Great
time
American
ago.
Dynasty.
Yeah, that's
Talks
right.
about the history of that house.
Okay, so enough of
Apparently,
that.
she's doing renovations too. But anyway,
But
this
what's
isn't
your
a Taylor
call?
Swift
Hey,
segment.
you're supposed to ask sports people like you, who's winning and by what score?
Oh, by what score? I'm going to say the Chiefs win it. I'm sorry, Jim.
It's okay.
I just think, I don't know, there's just something like about the way that they played against Buffalo. Like even when they're down, even when they were like, Buffalo was pushing, it just never felt like the Chiefs were going to lose. So I'm going to go Chiefs 27-24.
It's very sad.
Our staff found Connor Kennedy, son of RFK Jr., summer of 2012, when Obama was still president.
Oh, that's incredible.
Okay, so
Nobody cares about that. Okay, go ahead, Marjorie.
We're having smashing up of DEI programs, universities, private businesses all over the country. But Roger Goodell, who runs the NFL, so far he has said they are not going to follow this smashing of DEI emphasis that Donald Trump has set in speed.
Yeah, so Roger Goodell always addresses league issues. Like, the week of the Super Bowl, he gets up, does this big press conference. And so yesterday he talked about this. And listen, I don't give Roger Goodell a lot of credit for many things. And I would sometimes, I don't think the Rooney rule, which he referenced a number of times in this conversation about DEI policies. I don't think it is a perfect rule. I think there are major flaws to it. I think the Patriots exploited it this offseason. I do not think that they were true to the spirit of the Rooney Rule.
Explain in 30 seconds what it is around people of color.
The Rooney Rule was instituted 2 decades ago, to increase the possibility of minorities, and now they've added women to it, of getting opportunities in the NFL. So you have to interview in person at least 2 minority or female candidates for any major position. So that's head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I believe quarterbacks coach might also be on that list. And if you have a general manager opening. So the spirit of the rule is supposed to be to get, not white males in front of ownership groups and leadership front office groups and give them an opportunity to sell their program. And it also is supposed to get more minorities into the pipeline. I will say it has done that. We have far more black head coaches now in the NFL and minority coaches in the NFL than we've ever had. So I think that, and you often see a more diverse coaching staff, I think, both in coordinators, including offensive coordinators, than you have in a really long time. So in that sense, it has worked. But the Rooney Rule itself, I think, probably needs to be altered a little bit because it's just taken advantage of. And what I'm talking about, when the Patriots had the head coach, they fired Gerard Mayo, a black former player, and they knew they wanted to hire Mike Vrabel. They also knew they had to interview 2 minority candidates in person. So they interviewed Byron Leftwich, who has not coached in the NFL in 2 years. Most recently, he was the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. And I honestly don't even remember the name of the other guy they interviewed.
Who also hadn't worked in the NFL
Who hadn't worked in the NFL in a while. And neither of them got jobs on any staff or any other interviews. It was just they weren't working. They were available while everyone else was playing in the playoffs. And so they interviewed him. They didn't even ask to talk to Aaron Glenn with the Detroit Lions, who is now the head coach of the New York Jets. This was a valid head coaching candidate. And they didn't wait to talk to him because they just wanted Mike Vrabel.
Can I give you a small correction? They did, and he turned him down. Glenn refused to be interviewed.
But only because they asked him after they asked to talk to the offensive coordinator.
He knew he was being played.
He was being played.
Exactly.
When there was outrage, I don't care. That's why I don't count it. I don't count it that they actually asked him to interview. They asked him to interview after they took heat for not asking any minority candidates who had a real shot of getting the job. And he turned them down, and he should have turned them down.
I don't know if you can explain. The Goodell thing is sort of surprising to me, not only because he's generally a weakling, but he's also the owner's guy. And many of the owners are Trump supporters.
Guys.
So I was really surprised by this.
I was too, and also I think it's causing a lot of us anxiety. And you guys just talked about it in the first segment of the show. If you're not showing deference to this administration, they have shown already that they will try to punish you, that they will try to hurt your brand. And for Roger Goodell to stand up on the biggest stage leading into the biggest week of football and say, we are going to continue our DEI initiatives regardless of what's happening elsewhere. It has worked for us. He's putting the NFL and himself in kind of a precarious situation because you don't know. Maybe Trump will just ignore it. We don't know. Maybe he will now take his ire and anger out in some way. Maybe he won't. Like, you just don't know. It's a very volatile situation. So that's why I give Roger Goodell credit. He could have talked around it or, said they were going to do it, but in sort of like broader, more vague terms.
Yeah, I agree.
But he in no uncertain terms said, we will continue our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion in the NFL. And you know why I think it is smart? Because while the owners, Jim, and he may work for the owners, while the owners may often side with Trump.
More than
or be
half the players are black.
More than half the players are black, and your league is on the shoulders of
There's
minority.
something that looks ridiculous when so many of your most talented players in the field are African Americans.
I know.
Can I ask you one more thing
it's
about
shocking to me.
His press conference? Brian McGrory, former editor of the Globe, now at BU, one of his side things, I think he has said this. Yeah, of course he said this on the air. He's a consultant to the billionaire who created something called the Baltimore Banner, which is the newspaper that is trying to take readers away from a newspaper in decline. The Baltimore Sun, I think it was called. The Baltimore Banner did this huge story that became a huge national story a week or so
Justin
ago
Tucker.
About the kicker for the Ravens. Can you tell people, and did Goodell address this at all?
So I did not see any comments. In full
Can you guys
disclosure,
check?
I did not watch the entire thing yesterday. I just saw snippets
tell
of
the
what he
story
did.
if you can.
So Justin Tucker is now being accused, much like Deshaun Watson, who is currently with the Cleveland Browns. Massage therapists have come forward to talk about, inappropriate behavior, sexual harassment, sexual assault from the Baltimore Ravens kicker, Justin Tucker, talking about him exposing himself, relieving himself in a manner.
Oh, I had read that part.
On a massage table.
Oh, God.
Brushing his private parts against massage therapists. A number of these therapists had to cut massages short. And since the article in the Baltimore Banner came out, more victims have come forward to talk about, the sexual pressure that they felt from Justin Tucker.
Jamie just found for us, the Associated Press says that Commissioner Goodell says the NFL is looking into, quote, serious allegations against Justice Tucker. They're, quote, they're obviously serious issues, and he is taking that seriously, as are we. He is taking that seriously, meaning Tucker? I don't think so.
Tucker said I
Goodell.
will say his comments when the original article, the initial article came out, were interesting to me. And I cannot for the life of me remember the phrasing of it wasn't a flat out denial. It was honestly to the point where I was like, boy, this leaves you a lot of leeway if things don't go your way. I can't remember the language. The language was very vague. It wasn't like, wow, no, I'm going to be proven innocent. I did not do this. It was something much more like tiptoeing around it. Like, it was something about the reporting. That basically the reporting was not genuine or the reporting was not entirely something. I don't even know if he said factual, but he blamed it on the reporting. He did not deny the allegations. I thought that was interesting.
So this next story is an odd one. We have the owner of the New Orleans Saints and her public communications guy getting very heavily involved in managing a child sex abuse mess involving the Archbishop and the Archdiocese in New Orleans.
And this was really, so this just came out. I'm sure that the timing, I'm sure as the Super Bowl gets ready to happen this weekend in New Orleans. Sports reporters, Jenny Vrentas is a very well-respected sort of investigative reporter on the sports side. New York Times /Athletic is who she works for. And she wrote an article yesterday about the owner. It's a woman whose, I believe, husband or father owned the Saints, and then she inherited the team. But she is a staunch Catholic. She is a big donor to the Archdiocese of New Orleans. And when there were rumors percolating and some accusations came out about another priest abuse scandal, I believe there were over 600.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
Alleged victims, like it would have bankrupted.
Yep.
The New Orleans Saints offered basically up their highest level communications team to be a crisis communications team for the Catholic Church, helping them craft messaging, shield certain people from any sort of investigation or interrogation on this. They tried to sort of cover up a lot of what was going on and really push the good things that the Catholic Church was doing. Like, this just goes to me, this is just like a microcosm of what we're living through right now, which is very wealthy people using their money to have outsized power and influence where they do not belong to protect their own interests.
Yeah.
Like, great that you're Catholic. Listen, I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic college. I no longer practice for this very reason. I do not, it has disgusted me how they've handled this from start to finish, so I no longer go to the Catholic Church. But, like, it's not, like, why are we trying to cover up what's bad? Why are you not trying to fix the problem so it doesn't happen again?
That is the $64,000 question at every archdiocese in America.
And it says really in no uncertain terms in this investigative piece that she didn't want, because, you know, a lot of people are going away from the Catholic Church, and she didn't want it to have a bad reputation. Well, it has a bad reputation because of what it did to itself. It's, you know, these aren't just willy-nilly accusations. This has happened in every Catholic country in the world. This isn't, can we call it an epidemic? I mean,
I think you can.
You know what?
It's just wild to me.
Remember the end of the Spotlight movie when it's talking about what happened in the Boston Archdiocese? And by the way, lots of people accused Sean O'Malley of not releasing a full list of credibly accused priests. But they had a list, lest you think this is just happening in Boston, of all the countries that this is going on all over the world.
It was that.
International sex abuse.
It was that movie and reading the book that movie was based on, because I was young when the Spotlight team did the story on the Catholic Church, so I probably was like in college and like
Walter Robinson, by the way, was standing right where you were, who obviously was a pretty key player, right there with last week.
Played by Michael Keaton in the movie, wasn't he?
You know what? Their reporting did their job, because that was the last time I stopped going to church.
You know, can I just do an update on something? John from Westford called in the first hour when we were talking about USAID and said one of the things they were funding, which is his defense of what the shutdown, the merits of the shutdown, said they were funding this research in the Wuhan lab, and it turns out our staff, check this out, it's called Millions to Echo Health Alliance, and they were funding it. What Elon Musk and Donald Trump failed to mention is that Biden already stopped federal funding to this organization in May, so there was no need to shut down USAID to accomplish the purpose that John, who's a very good caller, by the way, John from Westford, broached a little while ago.
But I just want to point out that the millions that they said went to EcoHealth was from the Trump White House. So I would
the Biden people agreed. That's why they shut him down.
Well, I think that the Biden White House has said something a little bit different from what my reading. But in any case, it's not something that was made up out of whole cloth. There's something there.
Correct.
A lot of things being made up these days, Marjorie.
So, Trenni, could you describe, we don't have a hell of a lot of time, but this Tufts lacrosse story, which we haven't talked about
in a while.
Here. Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
We talked about it when it first happened. So, long story short, the Tufts lacrosse program brought in a former Navy SEAL to run a training exercise for their athletes. Well, that training exercise was so difficult that it landed, I believe, 9 athletes in the hospital. Some who had I can't even pronounce the
I couldn't either.
The whatever the condition they had, which can, by the way, cause death if not treated properly. And an independent investigation has found that this, guy didn't follow rules. He didn't know the NCAA protocol. He pushed them to limits. There was no one around to stop him. There was no one overseeing everything. And athletes now are angry, and rightfully so, that the university put performance ahead of safety, which we see all the time. I did find it interesting, and that the Globe did interview some athletes who said, hey, we went through the same thing. They often bring in former Army or Navy, individuals to run us through harder workouts that make us a better person. I think a football player said that. But, fine if you want to do it, but make sure that person understands the level of athlete they're working with, and have other coaches there overseeing to say, hey, maybe what we're doing now is no longer in the best interest of the athlete. This is now just basically torture that we're putting, what are we putting kids through? I'm rereading all of the Fourth Wing books right now before I read Onyx Storm on vacation. Do you guys read these? Some of them are
No.
But I feel like it's like Bagskayev. You just like put people, it's like a war college. Like, what can you endure to go out on the lacrosse field? At the end of the day, I know Tufts has a very good lacrosse team, but it's just sports.
Can I talk about how they compounded the problem with doing what is not atypical, sadly, today? Tufts, this is from the Globe story. Tufts athletic officials quickly cracked down on communication regarding the incident, instructing not their staff, university athletes, students there to neither speak with the media nor ask about the Navy SEAL workout. And then at least 3 students independently confirmed the story.
Yeah, because they did not want anyone to talk about it, so that when their report came out that found a little bit wrong, people couldn't turn around and say, no, this report isn't thorough enough. There's a lot wrong. You never even talked to athletes I had forgotten about that
lack
piece.
of transparency, what right does the university have to tell a student that they can't speak to anybody about anything? I mean, it's really...
Well, I think about, though, if you are a student there, Jim, and you think you might lose, and I'm not sure if Tufts is a scholarship school. I believe it may not be. It might be more of an academic than an athletic. But usually if you're an athlete at a decent school for sports, even if you don't get an athletic scholarship, like a Harvard, you can get academic scholarships to lighten your financial load. And Tufts is like that. And if you think you may be retaliated against for speaking, then you probably are going to keep your mouth shut because you just want to finish school and you don't want to cause any more problems.
But that's the decision of the student. That's not the directive from the university to the student.
But if they but again, the university obviously knows what they're doing. It's a threat.
Got it.
It's a threat.
Okay.
Good to see you, Trenni.
Thank you, Trenni.
Thanks, guys.
We've been speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and the Boston Public Radio contributor. Coming up after the 12 o'clock news, former state rep Bill Straus and Chris Dempsey of Spec Dempsey Urban Planning join us for a conversation about the future of transportation in Massachusetts. And what about the bike lanes? What about those darting in and out of traffic?
Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you
and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/Mount Ida campus. A new series from Henry Louis Gates Jr. examines the powerful influence of Black migration on American culture and society. Don't miss Great Migrations, A People on the Move. Tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Acting like Donald Trump.
I'm Marjorie Egan. As President Trump threatens DEI and the future of philanthropy, we'll talk about what comes next with President and CEO of the Boston Foundation, Lee Pelton. And it looks like we have a race. GBH politics reporter Adam Riley joins for updates from the Boston mayoral campaign trail as Josh Kraft officially throws his hat in the ring versus Mayor Michelle Wu. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to be President Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary cleared an important hurdle this morning. The Senate Finance Committee voted along party lines 14-30. NPR President Trump is preparing to take executive action to make big cuts at the U.S. Department of Education. Here's NPR's Corey Turner.
Multiple sources not allowed to speak publicly tell NPR the Trump administration is preparing to take executive action to cut and try to close the department. The two-pronged plan is to quickly shrink it from the inside by shedding programs that were not explicitly created by Congress and thus not protected by law. The challenge there is the department itself and most of its signature responsibilities are protected and can only be changed by Congress. This includes administering Title I, which sends extra funding to low-income schools, and IDEA, the civil rights law that safeguards special education. The potential executive action would call on Congress
in this week, with the U.S. acting as a key mediator. Trump has also recently floated the very controversial idea of relocating Palestinians from Gaza to neighboring Egypt or Jordan, something Palestinians, Egypt, and Jordan all reject. Netanyahu and Trump are expected to hold a press conference later this evening after they meet. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Trump styled back the opening salvo of his trade war. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
Investors breathed a sigh of relief after Trump agreed to suspend 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada for at least a month. The move came after the two countries made face-saving concessions to strengthen border security. The Trump administration followed through, however, with a smaller 10% tax on imports from China, which took effect just after midnight. China's pushing back by taxing U.S. exports of coal, crude oil, and natural gas, and by launching a new antitrust investigation of Google.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Josh Kraft has made it official. He is running for mayor of Boston. The son of New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft declared his candidacy today. Kraft, currently chair of the Urban League of Massachusetts, had been rumored to be considering a challenge to Mayor Michelle Wu since last year. And last month, sources close to the first-time candidate confirmed that he would mount a bid. At an event announcing his campaign at Dorchester's Prince Hall today, Kraft acknowledged his wealthy background.
I wasn't just born on third base, I was born at home plate. But I chose a career of community service, and along the way, I've met so many remarkable and resilient people that call Boston home.
Kraft says there are a number of changes he'd make as mayor, including an immediate pause on all new bike lane construction and a push for elected members on the Boston School Committee. Southeastern Massachusetts saw a record number of marine mammal strandings in 2024, so says the International Fund for Animal Welfare, the partner organization authorized by NOAA Fisheries to handle stranded marine mammals in the area. Organization says it responded to 600 strandings last year, which is more than double its annual average. These strandings include 11 large whales, hundreds of dolphins, and local authorities say they've received reports of at least 2 more large whale strandings, a humpback whale and a sperm whale, last month. While they say more research is needed, they do have evidence of ship strikes, fishing gear entanglement, and disease on stranded dolphins and whales. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions, committed to taking travelers deeper into the wonders of planet Earth. Each expedition cruise is guided by a diverse team. natgeoexpeditions.com/cruises.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention we're going to be back here on Friday when the mayor is going to join us. The governor is going to join us from 1 to 2. Michelle Wu she's the mayor. She's not the governor.
I think she's still the mayor.
She's not the governor yet. Anyway, let's put it that way.
I think you got it. Okay.
Anyway,
She has to worry about getting reelected as mayor
That's
first.
right. Maura Healey will be here from 1 to 2 taking our questions.
She the mayor or she's the governor?
She is the governor. She is the governor. Michelle Wu, we have no date for when she's going to return.
Yes, we do.
And we don't know whether she's
Tuesday.
going down.
We do know she's coming on Tuesday.
Taking her newborn baby down to meet up with Congress. We don't know if that's going to happen
Well,
yet
she said yes yesterday. She's going. She just doesn't know the date. She may not be able to go on the 11th.
I wanted to bring the baby.
Okay.
I wanted to be nursing in the halls of Congress.
Okay, without looking at your script, what day is the governor coming?
Friday.
What day is the mayor coming?
I don't know.
Exactly, Tuesday. Okay, we're joined now at the desk, I think. Do you know who these people are? You don't know who they are, too. At the library, we have former state rep and, critically, former House chair of the Transportation Committee, Bill Straus. Good to see you. How are you? And Chris Dempsey, big-time transportation background, too. He's now of Spec Dempsey Urban Planning. It's our monthly transportation panel. Good to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Our pleasure.
So before we speak to you, gentlemen, we have a little sound of Governor Healey. Last time she was here, she's going to be here this Friday.
Oh, she is?
She was here last time she was here. She was talking about the transportation task force that has a lot to do with what we're going to do for transportation in the Commonwealth. So here is Governor Healey.
We are not about kicking the can. We're about trying to do as much as we can, using all the tools available. So, the task force is important, but is not the end game or the end all or be all of the work that we're looking to do when it comes to transportation.
So, Chris Dempsey, what's the task force, and are they kicking it down the can still or not?
So this is a blue ribbon commission, so to speak, that was formed by the governor in January of 2024 and just released its report in January of 2025, a few weeks ago. we're glad to be joined today by a member of that task force, and I'm interested in hearing the former chairman's thoughts on
I was here
that
to talk
conversation.
about the Super Bowl.
But this is, not the first and won't be the last Blue Ribbon Commission to come together to look at transportation. It seems like this happens every 5, 6, 7 years that we get really smart people together to come up with a document. I would agree with the governor's comments that this is an important contribution to the conversation, even if I feel that it falls a little bit short, or if I wish it did more in certain places. It's a meaningful contribution. It's a good step forward. It has some good concepts in it, and I hope that the administration will take it as a base and then do much more to build on top.
Would you say the same thing if he wasn't standing there, or would you be more critical?
Well, look, he was much more, I think, a member of the legislature than a member of that commission, and I think his work and
Is that the answer to my question?
Contributions stand for themselves. That's as critical as I want to be, because
fine.
I know that it's a hard job.
Okay, did you kick the can down the road, you and your colleagues?
I don't think so, and ironically, it was the task force document was kind of anticipated what we're seeing and will continue to see, I suspect, from the Trump administration, which is that to the extent the federal government has been a partner in transportation, that's the focus right now, in terms of grants and infrastructure assistance and operating assistance over the years, that's something we can't really rely on. So to the extent that the task force identifies that over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are going to have to rely more on our own resources, I think the task force report is very, very helpful. Long term, the heavy lifting, as it always does, will fall to the legislature and governors over the next couple of decades for additional resources. But in terms of the window that now confronts us, which I don't think people realized even a month ago, how much would be at stake or at risk from the federal government's role. The fact that the task force identifies, and it's in the governor's budget, that we would use the revenue from fair share, millionaire's tax, whatever you want to call it, that extra money will be used for operating needs of the T and other programs in transportation, as well as a bond securing asset for infrastructure projects.
We've had this discussion a lot of times when you're chair. I have to say, I said this behind your back and to your face, you're an outlier in a lot of ways. When the tax-phobic legislature was hiding out, you were pretty courageous publicly, in my mind, in saying what the legislature needed to do. But when you said a minute ago, Bill Straus, the legislature's going to have to do the heavy lifting, they did no lifting here. The voters of Massachusetts, thanks to millions of dollars from the union that Marjorie hates, the Mass Teachers Association, passed a tax on people who make more than $1 million a year, and the task force is willing to spend it. I mean, how did they didn't step up to anything. And
actually, that ballot question was presented to the voters because people like me and my colleagues voted in 2 successive sessions to put that on the ballot. So,
but they never had to raise taxes. I know they did. They never had to raise taxes. They were able to say the people will decide if they want to tax millionaires, right?
Not entirely true, I think. 5 years ago this month, the House at least, and I know Chris has mentioned this before on some of our segments, we voted in favor of some targeted revenue for transportation. COVID took over. It didn't get to be taken up in the Senate. So, and then in the 5 to 10 year ago window, we voted to raise gas taxes, I think as we should have at the time.
Which are going to become a lot less valuable, are they not?
Yes, but the gas tax revenue is still coming in at $500-600 million a year in Massachusetts, which is significant.
I guess the question is to a lot of people that are very upset with the MBTA, is this fair share tax and this money going to be enough to, I mean, we always hear about the MBTA is running this massive multi-million-dollar deficit. Is this going to be enough for at least a little while?
Yeah, this is not transformational money for the T. This is fill the gap money for the T. So the T is looking in the years ahead at a $600, $700, $800 million annual deficit. And this funding is mostly going to go to just plug that. Before COVID, fares were making up something like 30-35% of the revenue at the MBTA. That number is now down below 20%.
Wow. Both
because costs have gone up and ridership is still down.
Yep.
So that contributes to this gap. And Jim, I think you're right to some extent here.
That's very kind. Thank you.
This is not necessarily a bold approach to take the money that's already on the table thanks to fair share and to use it for the MBTA. I think it's a reasonable one. It's a pragmatic one, but it doesn't represent a significant political change.
You know, by the way, when you, Bill Straus, you mentioned a minute ago the feds. Not only is there concern, I assume, because Donald Trump is cutting back on whatever he can, particularly to states he isn't very fond of, but isn't his proposal to tie transportation money to a whole variety of things that have no connection to transportation, like what your immigration laws are in states like that? It seems to me it's probably illegal, but as of the moment, it hasn't been declared illegal. So this is going to be a tough nut to crack, federal money.
So federal money comes in, broadly speaking, two ways. One are the discretionary grant programs, and I think it would be ridiculous to think otherwise, that Massachusetts is probably among those states that's not going to do as well as it did under prior presidents, Republican or Democrat. Yeah. But the other is, and this will be a test of Congress and the courts, it seems, a big chunk of the assistance that the states get from the federal government in transportation is in formula-driven statutes that are the law. And it used to be, up until a week or two ago, an easy question.
That's an excellent point, but it really isn't.
But in terms of the grant portion of federal assistance, and that's why I think the task force is a good thing, because we're going to rely more on our own resources. We're probably better off, frankly, than some of the other states you might think would be targeted. But in terms of the formula programs that are in statute, on a bipartisan basis in these big transportation pieces of legislation at the federal level over the years, we'll wait to see. I think we've seen enough that we know what the tendency will be coming out of the Trump administration.
We're talking to former House Chair of the Transportation Committee in the legislature, Bill Straus, and Chris Dempsey. So at 11 o'clock today, Josh Kraft did his formal announcement that he's running for mayor. We hope we'll see him in the next couple of days. We have a request out. Mayor Wu will be here Tuesday. What are the issues? And by the way, Adam Riley, our colleague, who does excellent political reporting, is going to join us in about 30 minutes and give us his take. He was at the press conference. What are the major transportation issues, starting with you, Chris Dempsey, in the race between Kraft and Wu?
So, Jim, I now run an urban planning firm, and we're active in states around the country. We're working in Texas and Tennessee and Kentucky and New York State. It is fair to say that Mayor Wu is one of the best transportation mayors in the entire country.
Why do you say that?
Because she understands that the future of cities like Boston need to be about more than just how do we fit as many vehicles as possible into a tight space. And so she is leading on issues like public transportation, where she's willing to dedicate space for bus lanes, doing things like transit signal priority to get buses and trains that run on the street level moving faster. And then look, a controversial topic like bike lanes, she is showing some political courage here to say we need to make our streets safer. I am a beneficiary of that. I bicycled here today to the library down a bike lane on Boylston Street that she put in. I would make the case here that it's not just a safer street for me, it's a safer street for anyone that walks on Boylston Street, and even a better street for those who are driving, because the chaos of 3 travel lanes now down to 2, the road still works, it's not congested all the time, and things are a little bit safer.
So, well, first of all, I'd like to say for my bona fides, I bicycled in Provincetown 47 years ago. So I want to make it clear that I'm a cyclist too. It was 46 years ago, I think. So are you suggesting there are no issues in your estimation that are available for Josh Kraft?
Sorry, I don't mean to say that. I want to applaud the mayor for her work there, but it's clear that not everybody in Boston agrees with the statements I just made.
So what are the issues you'd raise if you were Kraft?
Well, what we hear over and over again is bike lanes. I mean, we have heard bike lanes from people in the Kraft orbit for the months that he's been talking about this run, behind the scenes. And so I think that that's going to be an issue. I'm expecting advocacy on both sides of that issue to be involved in this mayoral race, maybe even as a proxy for the actual campaigns themselves. And look, I get that not everybody agrees, but the mayor is showing political courage by actually pushing and advocating for these changes And I'm someone that thinks she's doing a great job.
How about you, Bill Straus?
Well, of course, I am not a Boston voter, but in terms of transportation
He
issues...
lives in Brookline, so, I mean, you know...
Well, that's close.
So does Josh Kraft,
Very
right?
close.
Isn't that where Josh
That's
Kraft
right. John Kraft, in the mean
Thank
streets
you
of
very
Chestnut
much. Go
Hill,
ahead.
as he puts it
You know,
himself.
the dream of every boy growing up in Brookline is to be the mayor of Boston.
That's right.
Go ahead there, Bill Straus. Sorry.
So, you know, certainly bike lanes are likely to be a flashpoint, I'm predicting, in the discussion in the mayor's race between these two candidates, because it's not just, as you see the landscape in Boston, the impact of the bike lanes that the Wu administration has put in is not just major traffic corridors like Boylston Street, but apparently in some of the neighborhoods as well. And so how those different neighborhoods react is going to be a factor. But we also have the street impact on bus lanes. And I remember a particular issue in a particular part of the city that some of my colleagues were in conflict with the Wu administration on some bus corridors that affected other vehicles that needed that, not bicycles. So transportation will come into play, and I think that you will hear, I think, both candidates talking about it as the campaigns roll out.
We're talking to Bill Straus and Chris Dempsey.
What about this? We talked about this before the show, Jim and I, and this is about the person you ran against, Diana DiZoglio, who is a state auditor now.
You should explain what you mean he ran against, for those who don't recall.
He ran against her for state auditor.
Diana DiZoglio in the Democratic primary.
That's right, in the Democratic primary. That's correct. Yeah, it was the Democratic primary. Chris
yes.
did. And she is a big advocate of transparency at the legislature, and as you know well, I think 72% of Massachusetts voters voted that they want transparency from the legislature as well. And she's now in a fight with the legislature because she claims that they are not forthcoming in their efforts to be more open. As a matter of fact, Spilka, who was the Senate president, compared her to Donald Trump.
Can I read the quote? Actually,
Sure.
This is on John Keller's show, Keller at Large. Here's the quote from the Senate president. We should start with the former legislator. I'm getting calls by veterans concerned about their critical services with potential cuts on the federal level, from parents whose kids have cancer, mothers whose parent is in a nursing home. They're all concerned of this takeover of the Congress's role. If people are concerned about Trump doing this is almost hard to read. They should be similarly concerned about the auditor trying to ignore the separation of powers in our Constitution. And by the way, I didn't see the show, but I did read the CBS News story. She does not mention that the auditor had the support of a mere, as Marjorie said, 72% of the voters to do this. And no one has yet ruled, including the Attorney General, that it violates separation of powers. You used to be in the legislature, Bill Straus. Remember that back there when
it wasn't that long ago?
Wasn't that long ago. So what's your reaction to what the Senate president had to say about this audit proposal?
Well, as you say, I can give you a reaction. What she meant, of course, you'll ask her. But I can tell you this from having served with Karen Spilka as a rep, and then when she made the lateral move over to the Senate years later, I had to.
No, it was good.
Yeah,
I didn't get it until Chris laughed, and then I understood it, and then I laughed too.
She chooses her
Thank you,
words
Chris.
very precisely. So I don't think that was an accidental or unscripted moment. But what I think she probably meant is, or what I take from it about the ballot question, even though it obviously received overwhelming support, and the legislature is always an easy target on these things, I suspect, and I hear from most legal analysis, that there are significant portions of the ballot question that are on their face simply unconstitutional. Everyone knows it. Very few say it.
Excuse me for a second.
I knew that would do it.
Everybody has been saying this since September. So when are we going to find out what exactly the constitutional issues are? We keep hearing this.
Well, in all fairness, we've asked Andrea Campbell that repeatedly, and she has not answered the
we
question.
have. So it seems that they're very elusive, whatever they are.
They certainly are.
Yeah.
And no one is in the race to the courthouse, as it were. But eventually they'll have to end up there.
But if I could say, Bill Straus,
and I just want to, on a specific point, the auditor has sent numerous requests for things like the way in which committee assignments are made, clearly internal operational
She's also
issues.
made requests for things that are clearly not
no question.
invading legislative autonomy there.
And actually, we did a vote back in, I think it was October or November, where we said that the nature of every audit is that it be done without bias. You hire an auditor without bias. So I remember we adopted a rule after the November election when we were in full formal session to say, fine, here are all these auditing firms out there, go for it.
They weren't elected. She was like, can I...
But the thing is, I think she's indicated that, this is driven by history as well.
Here's the thing, Bill Straus, and I've never been in the legislature, and I'm not going to run for anything. No, but
you're the only one here who hasn't run for office.
It's extremely annoying as a citizen of this Commonwealth and as a reporter. You can't get any information from Massachusetts about anything. This is the most closed-up state in the entire nation. I can't know how the person I voted for voted in the legislature. I think
in
that's
a committee.
Exactly.
And on this one, I
well, by the way,
let's
stop on that for a second. Wait. Here is her Spilka's line to John Keller.
Which is misleading.
People can watch the sessions online, which is totally misleading. What she means is you can watch the formal sessions with all the legislators there. You can't know. You're not entitled to know what happens at a committee. I want to get Chris Dempsey in the midst of this.
I just have to say, when I ran the committee for 14 years, every time a member of the working press asked who voted
You're an outlier.
and how they
You're
voted.
an outlier.
Well, but don't dismiss it.
But your colleagues don't do it.
Made it
that was a voluntary act on your part. They don't. The leaders don't subscribe to your transparency.
Bill, let's give Chris a chance.
By the way, how'd you vote on the ballot question?
I voted no.
You voted no?
Yeah, I'm in the 23%.
Oh, my God.
That
Why?
care about the Constitution.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
Care about the Constitution.
I want to be careful
we're
about
still waiting to find out what the constitutional issues are.
I want to be careful about my answer here. I said on the campaign trail that I would use the auditor's office to the full extent of its powers. I think that the current auditor is certainly testing those limits, and I can't fault her for doing that when I said I would do the same thing on the campaign trail. I believe I was the only candidate, or at least I was the only candidate that talked about it, who during the campaign trail actually asked experts for their advice on this question. I spoke with the retired Superior Court Chief Justice of the Superior Court of Massachusetts, which is basically the top job that's not a member of the SJC. And she said to me that it was very clear in her mind that there was a distinction between the branches of government here, and that it had been actually her job to determine whether or not to let the auditor's office audit the judiciary. And looking at that question, I think separates some of the history and some of the personalities at play here. And she said, we did allow it, but we were very clear that we are allowing it. And it's only because we are allowing it that this can happen. If we chose as the judiciary not to allow it, then it would not be constitutional. And I think that's what we're going to see play out.
Well, and I guess what I'd say to that, if I were the auditor, who's going to be with us, by the way, and take calls later in the month, Diana DiZoglio, I guess I would say if 72% of the people voted for something and I were the Senate president or the speaker, I would emulate that justice or that judge with whom you spoke and at least invite the auditor in a limited way. And I think I'd not compare her to Donald Trump. And I think I would probably recognize, instead of targeting all the comments at DiZoglio, that 72% of the people, whether this is constitutional or not, thought it was important because, as we say every week on the show, thanks to Todd Wallach, now at BUR, the only state in America where all three branches of government claim exemption from public records.
Well, and that's another thing that is really enraging, especially since some of these involve sexual harassment. How much money is the legislature spending of taxpayers' dollars on these NDAs? What do they entail? What are they about?
So,
I mean, Bill, you got to get with it. People are ticked off by this stuff.
Great issue to bring up. And on the NDAs, look, there's no question that the auditor championed that issue, and I think the administration made announcements last week or the week before. But these things really do. Especially these days, even though we're on the state level, if there's a constitutional separation of powers, that one branch doesn't interfere in an excessive way in the internal operations of the other, you have to respect that.
Well, maybe
You
they could release the
despite-
NDA information as much as possible, and maybe they wouldn't be in the mess they're in.
Well, there you have a matter of contract between people, and the prior ones is a question. Going forward, the administration has indicated and that
Healey administration.
the Healey administration.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That those are not to be favored going forward.
You have 15 seconds. You were going to say
Well,
something, Chris.
We have a process for changing the Constitution, and it would be interesting to know why the auditor chose to change the law and not the Constitution.
Well, in all fairness, we should end this by saying we don't know this is unconstitutional. She suggests it's not. Andrea Campbell has not yet taken a position. So let's
but a
be
constitutional amendment would clarify that. So she could go to the voters and say, I want to change the Constitution.
And the legislature
not
is
the law.
really going to pass that amendment and put it on the ballot, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Chris Dempsey, Bill Straus, it's wonderful to see you both. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Great to
Sorry
see
to
you.
give you a
Great to
hard
see you
time,
too.
Bill, but the legislature has driven me insane in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so you can't blame me.
I can take it. Don't worry.
Okay.
think you
We've been
can take
speaking
it.
with Chris Dempsey of Dempsey Urban Planning and Bill Straus, former state rep and chair of the Transportation Committee at the State House. Thank you both very much
Good
for
to see you
coming in.
both.
After a quick break, we're going to talk with Lee Pelton from the Boston Foundation. We're going to talk about this nationwide crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion and the future of philanthropy in the age of Donald Trump. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
Local farmers who raise chickens and other fowl are stepping up precautions against bird flu.
Here for what matters to you.
They're trying to protect their flocks from the flu and keep them away from wild birds.
Farmers, they're resilient people, but this is a tough one. We just do the best we can.
So far, there have been no human cases of bird flu detected in Massachusetts.
GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, helping professionals empower their careers and explore over 90 courses blending cutting-edge research with real-world application. More at executive.mit.edu. And Flower, Joanne Chang's bakery with 9 locations in Boston and Cambridge, delivering Valentine's Day sweets like a cake for 2 or sweetheart cookies. Orders accepted through February 9th. flowerbakery.com/valentines-day.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News with the library today, tomorrow, and Friday. Thursday, Senator Markey zooms into our show. Friday, 1 to 2, Governor Healey joins us at the library. And Tuesday, it's Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu, 11 to 12. And in about 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Adam Riley, who was at the press conference that Josh Kraft had to announce his candidacy for mayor at 11 o'clock today. We're joined first, though, by Lee Pelton, President and CEO of the Boston Foundation, member of GBH's Board of Trustees, and he previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. Lee Pelton, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. Good
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Yeah.
So, Lee Pelton, your organization is a nonprofit. There's been a freeze on this halt of funding for nonprofits that Trump talked about on, I don't know which day it was, day 5 or day 7, wherever it was. But this could be a pretty nerve-wracking time for you.
Well, it is. You know, it's tough wrestling with a stable genius, as we call it. But
I think he called himself a stable genius.
I think he did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is a you know, as they say, we live in interesting times, and there are a lot of challenges in front of us. TBF, to some degree. And certainly with other nonprofits, we do not have any federal funds. There's no federal funding that flows through TBF, not for us or as a pass-through to other nonprofits. There are, of course, some nonprofits that depend significantly on federal funding, and to stop that flow will have a significant impact on those places. And so what we're doing, first of all, is doing what we can to support these nonprofits who are facing some sort of diminished state based on the executive orders. By the way, do you know how many executive orders Trump has,
No.
the president has?
Nor do I.
In the last.
Do you?
You want to take a guess?
120.
I would guess something close to that. How many?
Boy, that's way. It's 45.
Oh.
That's all?
45.
Well, they're all pretty far-reaching.
Wow, I thought it was a lot more than that.
That's in 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's more. Those are more executive orders in 10 days than Biden in the last 2 full years of his presidency.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just an aside. So we're philanthropy is not, for us and for others, it's not just about giving folks money. It's providing support in a variety of ways, and we will, we'll continue to provide that kind of support in terms of the research that we do, which we talk about a lot here, and that is certainly very valuable to our community, and other kinds of support that we provide.
Can we talk a little bit more about your grantees that do receive some federal funding? We've talked to you ad nauseum about what at least we characterize as the utter collapse by university presidents around this country in the face of Donald Trump, with the exception of maybe Mount Holyoke and Wesleyan and
Princeton to a certain
Princeton,
degree,
it appears, to a degree. Are nonprofits doing anticipatory stuff too? Those receive federal funding, saying whether it's, we're going to talk about DEI, I got to change our language about DEI, we got to change the rhetoric on our website that is critical of the Trump administration. I mean, are they doing things to try to insulate themselves from possible funding threats, defunding threats?
Well, great question. Obviously, we are not monolithic, and different nonprofits will, approach this in different ways. I suspect that there are some who are actually doing that.
What do you tell them if they call you on the phone and they say, we respect you, you're a major funder of ours, we get a lot of money from the federal government, what should we do, Lee Pelton?
I say, as you've heard me say, there comes a time when you have to tell the truth, and where silence is betrayal. And that's what I would say to them.
That's what we wanted to hear. Sadly, not enough people are taking that advice. We're talking to Lee Pelton from the Boston Foundation.
We heard last time around about the massive donations to places like the ACLU, when Trump was first elected back in 2016. It doesn't seem that that's happening, or is it happening? We just don't know about, to organizations like the ACLU or other nonprofits like your own, where people are buttressing them up in the fears of their getting shafted by the federal government.
So the reference to ACLU is, I'm not sure.
The ACLU got, right when Trump got elected last time, there was an outpouring of money to people, regular citizens, and all this money to the ACLU to help them buttress in their lawsuits against what the Trump administration was trying to do. And there was a big reaction to his election. And it seems as though I have certainly not heard of the ACLU getting a similar.
But ACLU is a different example, though, because of the legal side.
Right.
How about nonprofits, where people are saying,
like
you have
your
to
own.
fill the hole that the federal government is going to create by not funding X?
Well, I can only speak about us. We had a record past 6 months in total contributions.
Wow.
Yeah. And why do you think that
Trump
is,
effect?
other than your stellar leadership?
No, it's all about leadership, of course.
Now, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think mostly it's about the economy. And if the economy is good, and folks who have the resources and their investment portfolios are vibrant, then I think they're more likely to do that. On the other hand, I would assume that the role that we play is significant, and it's being recognized. By the way, I should mention the ACLU and what they are doing, and you should go to their website, and on the homepage is something called Know Your Rights. Mm-hmm. And they have Know Your Rights about just about any circumstance that you can imagine, particularly about, in these days with, undocumented people and all of the sort of investigatory federal stuff that's going on. So for those who are listening, I would suggest that you go and Carol Rose is doing a magnificent job in that role.
We talked to you a lot, obviously, about race relations in America. I remember when you recommended that we go see, that was the Hanging Tree. Was that the name of the tree?
Hanging Tree, not
that we went and saw
Tree.
when it came to the museum here, the Gardner Museum, and
Yep.
it was just an incredible thing to see. I mean, what's basically happened here in the last couple of weeks is that the message is clear. If you're black, if you're brown, if you're a woman, if you're trans, you are not capable, you're incompetent, and that's why you got your job. That's kind of a tough thing to deal with for the next 4 years.
Well, it is, but we've seen this before. This is not new. You know, as Martin Luther King used to say, you know, this is a nation of creeds, but we have an anemia when it comes to deeds. And so we've seen this before. And in fact, I would suggest that where we are now is in fact a reaction to what happened on January 20th, 2008, which is Obama's, presidency. And that there was reaction to his term, with President Trump. And we've seen this so many times before, that there is the rhythm of this country has been a number of instances where we promote social justice, and there's a reaction to that. The Jim Crow that we talk about was in fact a reaction to the Reconstruction and a way to foment fear, which is what we see today, that separated poor black folks from poor white folks, because they knew that if those two forces could come together, that they would be a formidable force in American society, and didn't want that to happen. So this is not new.
Yeah, but you know what I think is new, Lee Pelton? You mentioned David Axelrod wrote a fabulous piece that we talk about quite often in the New York Times when Trump was first elected, saying, I should have seen this coming. And he said exactly what you just said here. This is a reaction to having the first black president of the United States and what he stood for and what he cared about and that sort of thing. The difference with Trump 1 is there was significant resistance. I would have to characterize the first 15 days is abject capitulation. If we have to cite Costco one more time, I'm going to scream. And the only reason we mention Costco every day is because they're virtually alone. There are a couple of exceptions. J.P. Morgan Chase with Jamie, what's-his-face, Dimon, and some others. But essentially, they're the holdouts. I just mentioned the couple of university presidents. That's the world from which you come. There is either the anticipatory obedience we talked about leading up to the swearing in of Donald Trump for the second round, and organizations, including private sector organizations, that receive no federal funding are pulling down their DEI stuff or anything else that will offend Donald Trump.
And his announcement at moments after that plane crash that he blamed DEI, and then it turns out it's a woman pilot. So what's the message? Women should not be pilots, and Pete Hegseth will no longer no doubt use this over and over again to say women shouldn't be in combat.
So fit that into your historical, I'm serious, historical analysis, the first 15 days and how it's gone here.
Well, you're absolutely right, but I also believe that the nation generally has been shifting somewhat to the right and away from so-called DEI. The doctrine. Yeah, so that was already in effect, and he came at a time and I think accelerated that pace.
If Joe Biden's son went to the Treasury Department and accessed the records of virtually every American and the payment system for trillions of dollars, the Republican infrastructure would have had an uprising in this country, and there's the opposite of an uprising. And it's sort of like, other than, I don't know if you saw the thing we quoted before, Chris Murphy, United States Senator from Connecticut, who said, the only way we can, I'm paraphrasing, is on NPR this morning, the only way we could not normalize the unconstitutional behavior of this administration is to not work with them on anything, so the public understands this is not normal, this is not acceptable. When you cooperate with those in any fashion, speeding up a confirmation vote, when you cooperate with them, and again, I'm paraphrasing what he said, you're legitimizing the unconstitutional government tearing down behavior. And I have to say, I find that pretty compelling. Do you?
Not really.
Why?
No, I don't.
Why?
Because I think we're in the arena right now, and what we need to do is our very best to move forward on a variety of issues, and we can only do that in partnership.
With them?
with them.
What is the indication that they want to do anything that you care about?
Well,
I don't mean that facetiously, but
I don't know, but I think it's worth a try.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what we could move forward on that people do agree with. We can't seem to agree on not allowing incompetent people who lie, you could say, perjure themselves in front of Congress. We put them right into the cabinet positions.
Right.
So
can we
I
stay
don't know what we agree on.
Can we stay on DEI just for a second? Fast forward a couple of years. What if this trend continues, and if Trump doesn't lose his attention span on this issue, which I can't imagine he would, because at least we think racism is sort of core to who he is. What happens? What happens in this country? What's the consequence of a relentless anti-DEI, anti-diversity campaign in general by Donald Trump in America?
Well, I just don't believe it will last forever. I mean, it's not going to last forever. I mean, I think there will be some reaction to it, maybe a generation coming up next. But we've always been in this sort of call and response, as I said earlier. And I think that will continue.
Do you have the patience for that? I understand. I mean, you might be right, but do you have the patience for that?
Well, I would have more patience if I was 30 years younger.
No, exactly. Exactly. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And you know, people call us, Lee Pelton, and I'm sure you experience this too. People call us who are decent people and say, let these tariffs go in, let people suffer economic pain, so in a year they'll realize that when Donald Trump said he's going to bring down prices on day one, it was a lie. But in the meantime, a lot of suffering happens. We wait, and I agree with you, someday it will change. A huge amount of suffering happens in the meantime.
Right, and our job really is to focus on the suffering and to ease the suffering that individuals and families and nonprofits, municipalities are having.
Well, Lee Pelton, thank you very much, as always, for coming in.
It's good to see you, Lee Pelton,
Appreciate
Boston
it.
Foundation.
Good to see you. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Lee Pelton, who's president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, a member of GBH's Board of Trustees, and previously served as Emerson College's 12th president. Thank you very much, Lee. Coming up after a quick break, the Boston's mayor's race officially kicks off. We're going to hear from GBH reporter Adam Riley, who attended John Kraft's announcement earlier today. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
A progressive pastor at a North Carolina church spent years promoting racial justice and has repeatedly called out Donald Trump.
Where do we go from here? We go back to the beginning. We do what our ancestors have done. We get up and we walk toward the tomb because the fight's not over, it's just beginning.
But within weeks of the November election, the pastor was asked to leave. We investigate what happened on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Bernadine Sung Megason with Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Learn more at homesbybernadine.com. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News & World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. Thursday, Senator Markey zooms in. Friday, Governor Healey will be with us for an hour from 1 to 2 at the library. And next Tuesday, Mayor Wu. Speaking of Mayor Wu, we're now joined at the library by GBH political reporter Adam Riley, fresh off the launch of Josh Kraft's mayoral bid for Boston. Before we get into Adam's analysis of what happened today at 11 o'clock, here's a little bit of Josh Kraft's campaign video that was released yesterday.
I'm Josh Kraft. There's a saying we had at the Boys and Girls Club. I care. I care that Boston is heading in the wrong direction. I care that our region continues to leave many people behind. I care that middle-class families are squeezed by the cost of housing. And I care that City Hall puts politics and ideology ahead of impact. That's why I'm running for mayor.
I am so excited you were here, Adam. I have to say,
Yeah.
I'm so into this.
I
Adam
don't
Riley,
usually get
welcome.
that, so
It's great to see.
Okay.
It's great to see you, Adam.
So I must say I was very surprised when I heard Josh Kraft was running for mayor, but he is. So what was the sense of things, the feel over there this morning?
It was a really interesting rollout. One of the things that struck me was that I thought he came across better in person than in that campaign video, which, might have felt a little flat to some people. He gave a pretty good speech. The speech he gave was really tough to pin down ideologically. He got big applause for saying that he was against bike lanes and bus lanes.
I'm not surprised.
I heard you on the way over. And people loved that. He also said that he's in favor of having elected people on the school committee as well as appointed, which is a step Mayor Wu hasn't been willing to take.
And which the people of Boston voted
which
for
the people
in an
of Boston
advisory.
voted for by an overwhelming margin, and it just hasn't happened. He also said he's in favor of rent control, a specific type of rent control in which property owners would be given, I want to make sure I get this right, tax breaks in exchange for caps on rent for lower and middle income properties. But he was saying, Mayor Wu promised this 3 years ago. She hasn't been able to get it done. I'm going to get it done. So it was an interesting mix of progressive and more conservative prescriptions. But what really interested me is his primary attack against Mayor Wu is character-based. And I'm just going to quote really quickly from his speech as prepared. And I think he hewed pretty close to this. He calls it the heart of the problem. We have a leader that just does not listen, Josh Kraft says of Michelle Wu. Too often, Mayor Wu acts as if she alone has all the answers, whether it's housing, schools, neighborhood services, or bike lanes. Instead of listening to community voices, trying to understand what families and businesses need, too often, she's tuning them out. On issue after issue, the mayor's become less and less receptive and more disconnected from the communities, their feedback, and their needs. So again, to my ear and eye, that's a character-based critique. That's a character-based reason for running for mayor, and that's the core of his argument.
Did he have supporters surrounding him when he did this, or was he by himself?
He did have supporters.
Like who?
He was up on stage.
Anybody we'd know?
Yeah, I don't know. I started to say he was up on stage with, and I'm not sure these people were up on stage with him. I talked to, Louis Elisa.
Of course.
Yeah. So I talked a little bit to Louis Elisa, who initially told me he was there because it was at a Masonic lodge in Dorchester, and he initially said, I'm a member of this Masonic lodge. But then he went on to say that he thinks the people of Boston need a leader who's going to listen to them. And I said, okay, is that a endorsement of the critique that Josh Kraft made? And he said, I don't think Roxbury is being listened to right now. He put it that broadly. He said on White Stadium, on issues like traffic reconfiguration, issues like the John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science being moved to another neighborhood, that he doesn't think Roxbury is being listened to.
Well, they didn't move it, didn't they? Didn't they back off on that
But
one?
that was the push,
Yeah.
right? From the
Did he
Wu
take
administration.
questions? Did he take questions?
It was interesting. He took questions from the print media. We were given our own chance to ask questions. I say print, obviously it's web, and here I'm talking with you on the radio. But there was a scrum for TV, and there was a scrum for quote unquote print. The scrum was presided over by Anisha Chakrabarty, who used to do comms for Governor
Baker, of
and
course.
now I believe is the comms person for the Kraft Group. It was also watched, these scrums were watched by Will Kaiser and Eileen O'Connor. Will Kaiser, who was sort of a mastermind for Baker and helped him figure out how to tack a perfectly skillful line between Trump Republicanism on the one hand and Massachusetts Republicanism on the other. So there's interesting connections.
By the way, we dealt with Anisha when we got Robert Kraft on the show during the NAACP convention. We got Kraft on through Anisha, who had just left.
So I'm wondering if he thinks it would be better to run at a time when the Patriots are winning as opposed to losing, that he might get a little hostility there for the Pats fans that are upset about the team at this juncture.
That did not come up, and I did not have the sort of thoughtfulness to pose the question. But I did ask Will Kaiser if Kraft is going to be staying on in his role with the Patriots Foundation, because if he does...
He is, isn't he?
Well, that was my understanding. Kaiser told me that, again, his political advisor told me it's an open question. And I think they got to be sensitive to the at least possibility that would raise some big perceptions of possible conflicts of interest, right? If he does.
Not only one of the things that concerns me already, and this campaign just started 2 hours ago, is, he is never identified without saying the son of Robert Kraft, which I think is fine introductorily. But to me, and I've thought a lot about this, and I'm sure I'll think a lot more and talk to Marjorie and our colleagues about it too. How long is that okay? That his father, now, for example, I don't know if this question was asked, I'm curious. There's a huge issue around the Revolution Stadium.
Yes, there is.
In Everett, because Robert Kraft, the father, is supposed to be negotiating with the mayor of Boston, who is currently the opponent of Josh Kraft, about what would be an adequate community benefit compensation. So far
for this other stadium.
For the other stadium, right. And so far the Everett, the soccer thing, and so far they've offered what I consider to be sort of a pathetic $750,000. The city is saying the model should be, under Wu, should be the Everett Casino, the Wynn Casino, Encore, $68 million, wherever it ends up. But the point is, a negotiation has to be concluded by statute in the next handful of months, and his father is conducting, I mean, not personally, his father's organization is conducting the organization with the guy that Josh Kraft wants to beat.
Yeah,
there's something going on.
And Josh
there.
Kraft was asked about White Stadium today, and he said he thinks there should be a pause on White Stadium, which is...
no, I don't mean the White Stadium. I'm talking about the compensation to the city.
Forgive me.
For the Revolution Stadium, in the statute authorizing the Krafts to build in Everett. They had to cut deals with the legislature.
Community benefit
Right,
payments.
with Everett, and they cut the deal with Everett. They haven't cut a deal with Boston.
If he was asked about that, I was not there in the scrum at which that happened.
And his White Stadium position has put a hold on the thing?
His White Stadium has put a hold on the thing. And as you guys know, there are a lot of people in the community who feel like Mayor Wu did what I think Marty Walsh's critics thought he did with the Olympics, right? You come to a decision, here's our plan, we're going to do it, and I will do community input to get you all on board with the decision that's already been made. So, but it's still, I mean, there too, there's the possibility if a women's soccer team, pro soccer team, isn't playing at White Stadium, they could be playing in Everett. So these issues are inextricably and awkwardly linked, I think.
And how do they deal with the fact that, I remember interviewing him when he was at the Boys and Girls Club when I was at the Herald. He's done a great job. I think people think that he was a great leader of that place. But he's got a huge problem. I think he's lived his entire life in Chestnut Hill. And then a year or two before he's running for election, he moves to the North End, and that's swell. But his children haven't been in the Boston schools. He hasn't been dealing with the issues of Boston. If Boston's such a great place, he's so worried about it, why has he been in Chestnut Hill his entire life?
Again, I didn't hear that particular question posed. There were a couple questions other than the ones that we brought up that I wanted to run by him after the scrum that I was allowed to participate in, and we were cut off before I had a chance to. I'll bring those up in a moment. But I think that the equation here is complicated by the fact that Mayor Wu grew up in the Chicago area. So if you are a native Massachusetts...
You think that's going to cut it?
I think, you know what? I think it will make it have a different resonance than if you had someone who was an incumbent mayor, who was born and raised in the city of Boston, who could play the "I've always been here."
But I think he would not
George did that.
He moved here to run.
She did.
Yeah,
to run.
and that didn't work.
I don't mean that critically. That is a fact.
I agree with you.
And she did not. But I understand what you're saying.
That I think it might pack a little less heft as a critique from people who see him as, maybe he's a newcomer to Boston, but maybe they see him as more Massachusetts than they see her.
Could you explain?
Here's a good question.
Go ahead.
Why would a candidate for mayor have such a tightly controlled scrum?
That was my question. I never heard of anything like that.
Mayor Wu comes here once a month and takes questions from anybody.
Well, by the way, in fact, the latter part, we've invited Josh Kraft. I'm assuming he will be here, and I'm guessing, I hope, regularly. But why were there separate scrums? I never heard anything like that.
I haven't seen that. And I was talking with another reporter, among other things, if you let everyone get together, if you let TV and print or radio go in at the same time, he doesn't have to answer the same question a zillion times, right? It just practically speaking, it seems to make more sense. There's more time.
You were actually separated? The print reporters?
Yes.
That's weird.
The quote-unquote.
Very weird.
I haven't experienced that before.
Neither have I.
So,
what do you think is? I know you don't know, but why would you do that? particularly in light of what you just said. You have to answer the same question 2 times.
I mean, I'm thinking out loud here. Maybe there's a sense that if it's less crowded, it creates a more intimate scrum for TV, makes the visuals look a little better, possibly. That's one possible answer, but it was odd. And I wanted to ask him, the question I really wanted to ask him, given his father's ties to Donald Trump, is I wanted to ask before my scrum wrapped up, how important do you think it is that the mayor of Boston, whoever he or she is, pushes back against the Trump administration? But I wasn't able to ask that because we were cut off.
The one thing, we're out of time. I have to say, I hope people, I don't care who you're supporting in this race, the fact that 2 smart grown-ups are running for mayor, and whether you like Kraft or Wu, these are 2 smart, accomplished people. And I think that's a really good thing for democracy.
It'll be fascinating to watch. It's going to be a really, really interesting race.
We're really glad you came here, Adam. We were dying to hear what went on. Thanks so much for your report.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very
soon.
much.
Adam Riley.
We've been speaking with GBH political reporter Adam Riley, fresh from the press conference in the weird scrum that the announcement about Josh Kraft running against Mayor Wu was made. Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news from local to the national, we're going to talk with CNN's chief national correspondent John King about Elon Musk seeming to have seized control of most of the, well, not most, I'm exaggerating, but big portions of the federal government. What could go wrong? And Democrats struggle to fight back or know what they should be doing. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Your GBH radio listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. It takes just 2 minutes to enroll and a few dollars a month on your credit card. Small monthly contributions, huge impact. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about Safety Insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. And the Peabody Essex Museum, where visitors can experience art and culture in real life. Escape the algorithm at the Peabody Essex Museum. You can see what's happening this week at PEM.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. It's another dizzying week in Washington, just over 2 weeks into Trump's second term. While not all of Trump's spaghetti is sticking.
These weekly for a year. We'll open the phone and text lines at 877-301-8970. What is your chain rest?
To the full U.S. Senate.
A scion of the famous Democratic family, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. spent years as an environmental attorney before pivoting to anti-vaccine activism, which built his reputation and fortune. The outcome of Tuesday's vote in the Finance Committee was uncertain. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana who's a physician, said he was struggling with the decision because of how it could affect vaccination. But in the end, all Republicans voted in favor of confirmation and all Democrats opposed it. If confirmed, Kennedy will oversee all the health agencies, which includes Medicare, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institutes of Health, and more. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
China's hitting back at the Trump administration for tariffs, which took effect at midnight. NPR's John Ruwitch reports the Chinese government did a lot more than just tit for tat this time.
When President Trump began imposing tariffs on China during his first term, Beijing responded for the most part proportionally and in kind with tariffs on U.S. goods. This time, Beijing has announced retaliatory tariffs of 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas from the United States and 10% on oil, farm equipment, and several types of vehicle. Trump administration. John Ruwitch, NPR News, Beijing.
Trump hit the pause on tariffs against the U.S.'s American neighbors, staving off a regional trade war. The administration has agreed to a 30-day delay after Canada and Mexico pledged to increase border security enforcement. State Farm is seeking an emergency rate hike in California in the wake of the shrink.
State regulators say they're setting hearings to consider their request. For NPR News, I'm Kevin Stark in San Francisco.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 83 points at 44,505. The S&P and NASDAQ are also up. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Josh Kraft has made it official. He is running for mayor of Boston. The son of New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft declared his candidacy today. Kraft, currently chair of the Urban League of Massachusetts, has been rumored to be considering a challenge to run Mayor Michelle Wu's run against her last year. Last month, sources close to the first-time candidate confirmed he would mount a bid. At an event announcing his campaign at Dorchester's Prince Hall today, Kraft acknowledged his wealthy background.
I wasn't just born on third base, I was born at home plate. But I chose a career of community service, and along the way, I've met so many remarkable and resilient people that call Boston home.
Sounds like a young Bob Kraft. Kraft says there are a number of changes, and Services Secretary John Santiago called the increase more than just a financial adjustment, but a promise to keep those who...
Insecurities involves the risk of loss.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here tomorrow. And on Friday, we'll be back here as well and joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. She's going to take our questions and yours from 1 to 2. And then it's going to be Ask the Mayor next Tuesday right here at the library with the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hello again, Jim.
Hello, and Marjorie, before we introduce John, you were saying, why isn't anybody filing a lawsuit? Here's the headline on CNN. FBI employees filed class action lawsuit against Department of Justice over questionnaire tied to alleged efforts to purge the workforce. Talk about great segues. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, who will, at the end of the segment, make his prediction with a score for the Super Bowl. That would be John King. John, it's good to see you.
Great to see you. Happy Tuesday.
And to you.
Well, John, I'm glad that Jim alerted me to the class action lawsuit against the Department of Justice over these FBI workers. Or the courts move so slowly, it could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now before there's any resolution. Other places, the unions have filed suit as well involving...
Well, they could enjoin the thing right away.
Can they? That's my question. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, that usually depends on the first judge you get, right? Do they stop it like they did with some of the immigration stuff, or does a judge say Trump is right and then it goes to an appeals court? I think Jim just made the point. You're going to see this in several different states. Number one, federal courts in different states, and you're also going to see this not just the FBI. They're firing the DEI people at the agencies. They're telling federal employees you should take a early retirement, and a lot of Democrats and a lot of the unions are saying, don't take that early retirement because then he's going to stiff you and he's not going to pay you. And so there's a lot of these controversies. It's not just the FBI. Elon Musk is going agency to agency. Donald Trump says he'll stop him if he crosses a line, but don't hold your breath at the moment anyway. So I think we have to watch all this play out. There's so much happening at once across all these agencies that it's hard sometimes. There's so much dust up there, and that's part of what Trump is trying to do. You're looking over here talking about, the FBI agents who worked on January 6 cases. Well, what's happening in 20 other government agencies and departments and grant money and the attempt to freeze spending and the attempt to take over USAID? So you have all of this happening, all this tumult, and a ton of it is going to end up in the courts because if you read the Constitution, the Congress appropriates money. So does Donald Trump have the power to shut down agencies? Guess what? We're going to be in court for a very long time. But they know that. They know that. And their attitude is, if there are 20 suits and we win 5 of them, that means we moved the ball on 5 things.
But I guess, but in the meantime, all these people are out of work and out of a paycheck and out of their pensions and out of their retirements, et cetera, et cetera. So they just get screwed.
Well, I think there are a lot of questions. We don't know if they're going to get screwed in the end, but I think that is the one thing we know is true. Trump is signing some of these executive orders that say, the sun will rise in the east tomorrow, and then he's saying, I made the sun rise in the east. So you can't believe everything they say, but certainly the idea of the anxiety and the uncertainty, whether you're an immigrant in America who applied for asylum under Joe Biden, or whether you're an FBI agent who investigated January 6th, Donald Trump is saying that you're in trouble. And will you be in trouble? I can't answer that question today. But just the fear and the uncertainty across the spectrum of the things he is doing is remarkable.
Are any Republicans in Congress vocally upset about the fact that they made laws and Elon Musk unilaterally, with the assent of the President of the United States, is deciding to undercut them or void those portions of laws that they don't like?
I would say, Jim, to that question, that a number of senators who would tell you privately that Tulsi Gabbard is not qualified and that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not qualified are about to vote for Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So you've had a bunch of senators on this question you asked me specifically say, we need to see how that plays out. The president needs to be careful here. But nobody is saying, actually, back to Marjorie's point, for some of this to stop, Congress would have to sue the president because Congress passes the laws appropriating the money. Congress passes the laws passing a lot of the rules about federal employment and the like. So the Congress would have to sue. The Republicans run the House and run the Senate. So for Congress to sue, Republicans would have to approve it. And again, don't hold your breath.
John, I know consistency is not at all an issue here, but I'm going to ask about it anyway. So on one hand, Marco Rubio meets with the president of Panama to say, my boss wants the Panama Canal back because there's too much Chinese influence. And then they stop all funding to underdeveloped nations through USAID, inviting essentially China to get involved in every one of those situations and say, the U.S. abandoned you, we're going to do what the United States refused to do under Donald Trump. I know it's a rational question in an irrational world, but is that causing any concern internally about providing this huge opening for China?
It's causing a ton of concern, especially in the NGO community, the organizations that tend to get the USAID money and deliver it around the world, whether you're helping people with poverty, you're helping people clean up rivers so they have clean drinking water, you're helping people with education programs, you're helping people essentially raise the flag of the United States and say, we're the good guys and we're here to help. You're absolutely right that this is already a huge issue. This has been an issue for the past 25, 30 years. Look at Africa. China goes in, they develop a seaport, they open a mine, they create jobs, quote unquote, but there aren't environmental standards. China's influence around the world, especially in the developing world where there are resources, or in the case, yes, China is trying to exercise power on naval waters all around the world. Is China running the Panama Canal? I'd leave that to the fact checkers. That's probably not a true statement per se. Does China have a lot of influence? Yes. So again, this is an example where Trump often actually does identify an issue or to some a problem. And then what he says about it, has a nugget of truth, but a lot of it is not true. But if you're looking for intellectual consistency, the first couple of weeks have told us you're still searching.
John, this will give you a sense of a part of our audience, which we love. Here's a question for you from our audience. What is in the bucket behind John King in the back seat? Is John going fishing after this interview? Are you going fishing after the interview?
Baseballs.
No. Baseballs. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
No, it's when I take my 13-year-old out and we're practicing. Baseball starts in a month, and we got to practice. So He's a catcher, so I take him to the indoor baseball facility and I throw the ball as fast as I can at his feet, and he's got to bounces off his head in the mask. You got to practice blocking.
That is a fabulous thing, John.
John, let's talk about the whole thing with the tariffs. I mean, I don't know if this was totally planned by Trump, but if it was, it makes it even more brilliant than what ended up happening, where he uses the strength of our economy to sort of blackmail Mexico and Canada, and then he has the meetings late in the day and he backs off on the tariffs. But then you find out that what Canada and Mexico gave him wasn't really anything new at all. That this is, I believe, the third time that Mexico has talked about sending thousands of troops to the border, that the fentanyl issue is not about migrants coming in. They're not bringing the migrants, they're fleeing whatever they're fleeing, but they're not usually loaded up with fentanyl. It's American citizens that are bringing the fentanyl over the border. Then the same thing with Canada, not that many people coming over the border, and Trudeau putting a lot of money for the border. Basically what I'm saying is, he pulled it. It was like a total smoke and mirrors exercise that got us all, including myself, really exercised. And he can claim, look at what I did. I put these tariffs in front of people, and I rescued everybody from these tariffs, and I've solved the immigration problem in Canada and the southern border.
Marjorie, he's done more in 15 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years and Barack Obama did in 8 years before that. Don't you listen to the President of the United States? That's what he says. Look, again, I say that again with a little snark, and sometimes it deserves snark. This is the challenge of covering Donald Trump. He lies all the time. That's just a fact. I don't like saying that about the President of the United States. He exaggerates all the time. There is sometimes a method to the madness, if you will. That the bullying and the threat of big things does sometimes bring movement. But you're exactly right that the movement that has happened, so Canada's going to name a fentanyl czar. There's not a huge traffic of fentanyl between Canada and the United States.
Right.
There just isn't. There is a larger problem at the U.S.-Mexico border. That is a fact. But you're absolutely right. Mexico has sent troops before. So now we're going to see where this goes in 30 days, right? He says it's a 30-day pause. I'll give you another example. I'm not saying that the Trump administration has not increased the visibility of immigration crackdowns. But the number of people deported so far is not that much higher than the Biden administration in its final months. And the trajectory in the final months of the Biden administration was going up at about the rate it's going up now under Trump. That doesn't mean they're not going to get there. That doesn't mean they're not going to dramatically increase those numbers. But if you look at the headlines and the things he has said and his people have said in the first 2 weeks, you would think they had dramatically changed the number of people being rounded up and deported. That's simply not true. They have increased it, but quite modestly.
You know, John, we ask you this almost every week, but it still bears mentioning. Other than Chris Murphy, who we've quoted a few times this morning, a senator, United States Senator from Connecticut, who said we should not cooperate with anything, on anything with the Republicans, because otherwise it will, and I'm paraphrasing, sort of cover up their unconstitutional behavior. Other than that, and whether one agrees with it or not, it's at least a plan. What is the Democratic plan after 15 days, or is there one, about dealing with extra constitutional behavior, a federal government tearing down, and the worst excesses of Donald Trump and his people?
I still think it's still evolving. You do see the USAID thing got people more vocal. Senator Murphy can sue. Senate Democrats can go to court and sue if they want, but they're not the Congress, right? You have to have a majority. You have to be the majority. The majority has to vote. So they will challenge some of this in the courts. They'll challenge some of this politically. In their defense, quote unquote, Trump is doing so much. There are so many bouncing balls right now. It is hard to decide which one you want to plant the flag on, right? And so they're trying to find more of a broad thematic. And so Elon Musk is one of the themes they're stressing on. Who is this unelected person going agency to agency, getting access to all this sensitive information, somebody who has a number of potential conflicts of interest because of his dealings with the government. So that's one consistent theme you have heard from the Democrats. Nobody elected Elon Musk. Why is he doing this? And can we know more about it? The USAID, the firings, the FBI agents that we started the conversation with about January 6th, you are seeing some areas where Democrats think, I can explain this clearly enough to challenge it. But I do think it's going to take some time. And I do think when it comes to these lawsuits, I think we talked about this last week, we've seen this even before, but since the Obama administration. In the Obama administration, it was the Republican attorneys generals going to court to fight everything he wanted to do. Then Trump came in and Democratic attorneys generals. Then Biden came in and it flipped back to the Republicans. I do think you're going to see in a lot of this litigation, Democratic governors and Democratic attorneys general become the tip of the sword, if you will, the tip of the spear in the Democratic response to Trump. But because that takes time, I think we're weeks and months from really having a comprehensive view of have the Democrats figured out a central message under which to fight all these very different fights.
Do you know the guy who was just elected head of the Democratic National Committee?
I don't know him well. Okay. I have met him, I think, passing at a reception. Okay. Look, these institutions are less powerful than they used to be. Yeah. But he becomes instantly a spokesman. So you have a spokesman from the heartland who needs to get to, we talked about this all during the campaign. Democrats need to learn to talk to people like where I grew up in Dorchester, like where you grew up in Philadelphia, people who still work with their hands, people who don't know, should my kids go to college or should they learn some vocation? Where's the economy going? Democrats need to learn to talk to those people. They also need to talk to Trump voters. They need to talk to the people who went from Trump to Biden back to Trump. And so anybody who can help. Is the new chairman of the Democratic National Committee going to solve the Democratic Party's problems? No.
Oops. John froze. He'll reappear in a second. We're talking to John King, who is in his car with a bucket of balls in the back seat, baseballs. He's about to take his 13-year-old out, who's a catcher, to do a little practice kind of thing. We'll reconnect with John in a couple of seconds.
You know what I was going to ask him? I was reading this morning how I was not familiar before this morning with the Lutheran Social Services, which apparently is one of the chief employers in South Dakota, and it works for USAID. Oh my goodness, having a little.
Okay, well, let's keep going. Let's go.
Anyway, they were talking about how they work for USAID and how they're going to lose their funding, and it's a major employer. So you think John Thune, who is the senator from South Dakota,
and the leader of the Republicans in the Senate.
He probably doesn't want to see his constituents lose their jobs in great numbers like that. Kristi Noem is from South Dakota. She's, of course, not a politician there anymore. She's in the cabinet, Homeland Security. But still, when those kinds of job losses hit home, or when there's a crisis and a depleted FBI can't go after, I mean, you think that something might push somebody to really stand up.
Well, if you're a respected doctor from Louisiana and you believe in vaccines and you struggle with deciding whether you're voting for a guy whose whole career is campaigning against vaccines while vaccinating his own children, you'd think he'd probably vote against Robert F. Kennedy Jr., wouldn't you?
You'd think he would.
Senator Cassidy from
It'll be
Louisiana.
interesting to see what Mitch McConnell, who's a polio survivor, does. I mean, he's not running again for office. He's very elderly now. Maybe he'll do the right thing. I don't know.
So we just got disconnected from John King. We're trying to reconnect. We'll let you know, obviously, in a minute if that happens. I assume it will. So you feel a little better now that a lawsuit has been filed? And by the way, the answer to your question, let me be clear.
We never got anywhere with
No. But on the freeze thing, for example, the freezing of spending, the judge, a minute and a half after he got the case, not literally, or she, I think it's a woman, issued an injunction against the freeze. Even if it's not decided on the merits for years, as you say, a judge has the power. I don't know if they're going to exercise it. Judge has the power to stop, for example, this FBI questionnaire. Part of the questionnaire, if you don't know it, asks you what you've been involved in. And apparently, if you were in any way, even tangentially involved in the January 6th prosecutions or the prosecution of Donald Trump, which I think I heard last night on CNN is roughly 30% of the whole staff of the FBI.
Thousands.
A third of the FBI, if we follow Trump's practice of the first 15 days, could be out of work.
And I want to mention that Emil Bove, if that's how you pronounce his name,
I think it
he's
is.
one
I'm
of
not
Trump's
sure.
lawyers from his many legal problems that are all disappeared now, except for the case in New York. But he actually characterized prosecuting the rioters on January 6th who attacked police officers and beat them with sticks and tased them and in some cases caused heart attacks, etc. He called prosecuting those people a grave national injustice. I mean, it's as I said this morning, it's just crazy where this is going. But, and I also worry about if Elon Musk having everybody's personal information. That's not going to go well. I don't think that's not going to lead to good things.
We don't know, so this is speculation, but we sort of speculate for a living and get paid well to do it. Who do you think is calling the shots there? Musk doing whatever the hell he wants and Trump saying, I'm in charge, or is Trump directing him? I would assume Musk is pretty much a free agent, and Trump is depending on his other advisors to tell him whether or not he's going to rein him in. I mean, for example, when Musk... Oh, we haven't? Oh, John is back. He's on the phone. John King, we had a disconnection. John King is back with us on the phone from Washington, D.C., on his way to baseball practice with his 13-year-old. Hi, John.
John, I was asking Jim about, you mentioned before how Republicans are about to vote. I hope you're wrong, but they probably are going to put RFK Jr., despite his positions and telling multiple lies, of running our health care in the country, and Tulsi Gabbard, et cetera, et cetera. But I wonder when things hit home in terms of people losing jobs. I mentioned that John Thune, who runs the Senate, is from South Dakota, so is Kristi Noem, who runs Homeland Security, and I had never heard of the Lutheran Social Services. Apparently they're big employers out in South Dakota, and they're part of USAID. So when things like that happen, if they were to lose their jobs, or you see FBI agents and certain, constituents losing their jobs, I mean, what does it take, do you think, for some Republicans to stand up against this?
I think you just raised the key question. What does it take? In the sense that I've said repeatedly, the test here, I think, is going to be governance, because the Republican Party is so loyal to Donald Trump that people are about to vote for people they will tell you privately they do not, like Robert F. Kennedy and public health issues. But some of it's also, is he qualified to run an agency that big,
Right.
that big of a budget, with those tentacles? So what happens? Donald Trump's not on the ballot again. But in 2 years, we have midterm elections. And so if these people fail in their jobs, and if there's chaos in government, that's why Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, because of the chaos of COVID. If we have chaos in government, who's going to pay the price? Well, the Republicans are on the ballot in the midterm elections with a very narrow majority in the Senate and an even smaller majority in the House. That's why the earlier question before I got cut off about who is the voice of the Democrats, what is the message of the Democrats, those two things go hand in hand.
Hey,
can these nominees govern? Can they do their jobs effectively? And can the Democrats figure out how to talk about it?
Hey, John, your phone's not so hot, so before we lose you again, what's the score? Who's winning?
I'm gonna say go Birds, and I'm gonna say 28-17.
Oh.
They're actually going to limit the Kansas City offense. I don't think that's going to happen, Jim, but that's where my heart is.
Now, are you saying that, John, because you are one of those Patriots fans who's very upset at the prospect of...
His producer is an Eagles fan, he told us.
Is that the reason?
Yeah, all politics is local. If I can keep Allie Malloy and Jim Browdy happy,
okay,
that's my choice.
Tell Allie I send my best, and I'm rooting for her and me. Hey, John, great to talk to you. Have fun with your kid. Thanks for your time, as always.
Thank
John
you, John
King from CNN.
Thank you very much.
Is Jared around, or are we not doing it? Is Jared around? Okay, hey, Jared, you there?
Not now.
What are we doing here?
Oh,
it's not
good.
the end of the show.
Oh, gosh.
Marjorie's happy because I screwed up.
That's right. I always love it when Jim makes a mistake because I make so many.
Why, can we
He's
talk
always
about that for 30
criticizing me.
seconds, please, before we take a break?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you get such, what is it that gives you such joy out of that, would you say?
Because well, I don't think we really want to go into it, Jim. I think we really don't want to go into it. It's not a good.
I think
it's
you're
not a good
probably right,
thing.
actually. It's probably
okay.
true.
We were speaking.
So let me
with
be clear.
John.
The show's not over?
The show is not over,
Not
Jim.
over.
The show is not over. We have been
Sure
speaking
it's
with
not
John
over?
King, Dorchester's own. He's CNN's chief national correspondent, and we love talking to him. After a quick break, we're going to open the phone and text lines. I read the story in the Wall Street Journal this morning. I thought it was a great story about this couple that won this contest at Applebee's, where they get to go there constantly for a reduced price, which led us to thinking about what's your favorite chain restaurant of choice.
A progressive pastor at a North Carolina church spent years promoting racial justice and has repeatedly called out Donald Trump.
Where do we go from here? We go back to the beginning. We do what our ancestors have done. We get up and we walk toward the tomb because the fight's not over, it's just beginning.
But within weeks of the November election, the pastor was asked to leave. We investigate what happened on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Central Square Theater, presenting Space, a new play about the Mercury 13 female pilots, their ancestors, and the national civil rights space race that has spanned our past century. Through February 23rd, centralsquaretheater.org. And Brown University pre-college programs, where high school students can experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make friends and memories that last a lifetime. You can apply online at precollege.brown.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie. I'm never going to live this down. This is a real problem for me. Streaming at
Show's not over, Jim.
YouTube.com. See
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
There you
Okay.
go. /GBH News. We're back here tomorrow. I hope I'm right about that. And Friday. Thursday, Senator Ed Markey joins us via Zoom from Washington. On Friday, 1 to 2, Ask the Mayor, Governor Maura Healey will be here with us live at the library. And on Tuesday, it's Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu. And obviously, that will come just a couple of days after Josh Kraft announced his candidacy to run against Wu this morning at 11 o'clock. Well, and by the way, we are efforting, one of my least favorite verbs, to get Josh Kraft to join us on the show. So we have a long conversation. So you'll get to know him and what he stands for better. I'm sure it'll happen soon. When you picture a date night out with your partner, whoever it is, husband, wife, whoever it is, lover, what kind of place do you envision? How about Applebee's? The fast casual chain is once again offering it's called a date night pass. It's a little card that gets you 52, that would be the number of weeks in a year, by the way, discounted meals for the year. The Wall Street Journal writes about one North Dakota family, this is what Marjorie was talking about, that bought the pass last year thinking it'd be a great deal, didn't use it as much as they expected, and then spent the past December and January, when the thing ran out, eating at the restaurant 2 to 3 times a week, and they ended up loving it, even treating visiting relatives, the meals there, making healthy swaps to their favorite entrees when dieting. The phone number is 877-301-8097. This is not really about Applebee's. It's about chain restaurants and you. Which are the ones you really love, your guilty pleasure kind of thing, and which are the ones you would rather eat at a 7-Eleven at than go to? The number is 877-301-8970. I would like to say up front that I don't know what primary was. Every 4 years, Marjorie and I spend a week in New Hampshire for the presidential primary. A bunch of years ago, we were talking to each other, and we had never been to Hooters.
Right.
So we decided we would go to Hooters.
That wasn't why. It was because it was right near where we were, Jim.
It was?
That's why we went there.
Okay,
yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
In any case, we went there, and what was your reaction, which you remembered verbatim when we talked about it today?
Well, the wait staff, and they're all women there, they wear really sexy outfits, but what they have is these industrial strength pantyhose, so it sort of takes away a little bit of
Wasn't very sexy, which was Marjorie's
was not
point.
very, very sexy. But
Okay.
they were very nice. I don't remember if the food was any good or not.
Okay, but I do remember how the food was. I mean this. This was many years ago. I'm sure it's changed. The next night, where did we eat, Marjorie?
I don't remember.
At Applebee's.
Oh, at Applebee's.
Now, and I have to say, I know I'm
We did?
hyperbolic, but if I may say, if someone said to me, why don't you say to me, what is the worst meal you think you've ever had, Jim? Go ahead, ask me that question.
What is the worst meal you've ever had,
Oh,
Jim?
thank you for asking.
Yeah.
That would be that night at Applebee's.
Okay.
It was like eating a plate of mush in Manchester, New Hampshire. And so that would not be my choice. But
Okay.
apparently, this family from North Dakota
They
was
loved
very
it.
happy.
It was the
52
Bourbon
meals.
Street mushroom Swiss burger that they really
I would eat
adored,
that.
Jim.
I would
Those
eat
were
that
their
in a
favorite.
second.
And the riblets plate, they really liked that too.
877-301-8970 is the number. So what is your favorite chain restaurant that you like going to?
Well, I told you, I just went on Saturday to Shake Shack, which is right near the Children's Museum, and I just thought it was great. I thought I was ordering a cheeseburger with mushrooms on it.
What happened?
But instead I wound up getting the shroom burger, which was just mushrooms, the shrooms together.
And?
It was really good. It was really good. And I was with my little granddaughter who didn't finish her cheeseburger, so I finished hers for her, and it was really good too. I think that's pretty good. Shake Shack is pretty good.
Whose
and they had the
guilty
great
pleasure
milkshakes.
was it?
Michelle Obama.
Michelle
And
Obama.
she talked about that. Yeah. I mean, it tastes like real meat and all that kind of stuff.
Tastes like real meat. Okay.
And I used to love it when they had the Ground Round. I don't know if the Ground Round is still with us, but it used to be. There used to be one out in Cleveland Circle, and that's a great place to bring your kids because at the time the Ground Round was out in Cleveland Circle in Brighton, neighborhood of Boston, you could pay for what your kid weighed. So if your kid weighed like 50 pounds or 30 pounds or even 100 pounds, you paid $1. It was a great deal.
Yeah, well, when I was a little kid, though, there was a restaurant like that in Philadelphia. My mother couldn't afford to pay by the pound. So, sadly, that's true. 877-301-8897. You also used to love, I don't know how many Bertucci's there are left. You used to love Bertucci's.
Well, I used to love Bertucci's because they had great rolls.
Yeah.
And you
They
get
did
the
have
really
great
hot rolls.
I think
and
they still exist in
I
some
wasn't really that
locations.
interested in the pizza or the pasta, but I really loved those rolls that were hot and you could just melt the butter on them. They were great.
877-301-8097. We're talking about chain restaurants based on this story. Was it in the Wall Street Journal? I think it was. About this North Dakota family that did 52 meals in a year at their local Applebee's.
Dee in Ashland says her weakness is McDonald's French fries. They are simply the best, and they are really good.
If you eat them right
McDonald's
away.
French
Gotta
fries.
eat them right
Yeah,
away.
you don't want them sitting in the
No.
fryer later for too long. But the Shake Shack French fries were nothing like the McDonald's French fries.
Okay,
nothing
good.
like it.
So,
Okay.
Jim, what is your favorite chain?
Oh, what is your favorite
Well,
chain,
thank you
Jim?
for asking
You just
that.
told me Applebee's. Well, that's your worst.
It's the worst meal
Okay.
I've ever
What's
had
your
in
favorite?
my life.
What's your favorite?
Well, when Roger Berkowitz was here the other day, I made the point that he never liked
Yeah.
it when you called it a chain.
Yep.
And I have to admit, I haven't been there since Roger left. He hasn't asked me not to go, but out of loyalty to him. When Roger owned Legal Seafood, that was my favorite place. You love Legal Seafood in the old days too,
Legal
right?
Seafood, I mean, there's no shrimp like Legal Seafood
No,
shrimp.
it's true.
if you ask me.
877-301-8097.
We got Taco Bell. That's the big one.
You know who loves Taco Bell? Your favorite president.
Oh, yeah, didn't he have Taco Bell on Cinco de Mayo Day or something
I think
like
he
that?
did, yeah, Cinco de Mayo, yeah.
Okay. Oh, somebody else has Bertucci's in Olive Garden. Yeah, Olive Garden. Jared is big into Olive Garden, You can have
All the bread things?
Unlimited, I think they have bread sticks or something like that. at
Why
Olive
wasn't
Garden.
Jared on 10 minutes ago when he was supposed to be? What happened there? Marjorie's not paying attention.
The
877.
show was not over.
Thank
as you
you for
thought it
the,
was.
what's that called? A drum? What's that thing called? Rimshot. Thank you, John.
Let's go there. Here's a texter who says, Jim, are you really going to act like you've never given Marjorie a hard time about losing her place?
I've never done that
in the show.
I have too much respect for her.
Dish it out.
I would never.
If you cannot take it,
I would never.
Says that texter.
Never
text anytime.
do
That was a brilliant and
That's a
insightful
fool,
text.
whoever that
Thank
was.
you very much.
Al
on the road. Thank
Hey,
you
Al.
for calling.
Welcome to the show, Al.
Hey guys, how are you?
Excellent.
Fine, thanks.
Oh, Al, how are you?
Generally, I'm not a fan of chain restaurants at all. I worked in restaurants for maybe 15 years, and I much prefer, owner-operator type thing. But if I had to pick one, I would say Five Guys in this area.
Oh, yeah, the cheeseburgers.
I've been there. That's pretty good. They are pretty good.
Yeah. And if the West Coast would let us have an In-N-Out burger, I'd probably go there quite a bit.
Oh, I love those. I was in one of those when I was on vacation last year. I love those, Al. They're great. And
What's the one, Jungle something? Is that there's a special there. When I went to the car rental place, when I landed in California last time, the car rental place said, when you go to In-N-Out Burger, I assume this is this, animal style. Thank you, Eden, for this. They tell you order animal style. It's one of the best things I ever ate at a fast food joint. Al, thanks for the call.
Apparently, many
Appreciate it.
texters are letting me know that the ground round is set to make a return to Massachusetts in January.
That's good
It's
news.
February now, so they should be here.
Yeah.
And maybe it's next January.
No, I don't think
An
so.
old Chinese restaurant off Route 9 in Shrewsbury undergoing renovations to take customers back in time to one of Massachusetts' most beloved restaurant chains with a modern twist. They also give you little sundaes for your kid at the end. So it'd be like a scoop of ice cream with a little clown face on it, little hat with whipped cream. It's very nice.
One chain that I never went to, but then I mourned its passing. I assume it, again, we don't want to get sued here. Please check and see if I'm right. Didn't Red Lobster go out of business because of the free shrimp?
Or you can eat shrimp.
So did they go out of business or they just declared bankruptcy?
I think they're in bankruptcy and they're no longer doing the all-you-can-eat shrimp.
Let me see if we can destroy
that
everybody's
ran out of money.
business before the end of the show. Jamie, let us know if Red
But
Lobster
think
is still
about
around.
this. You glossed over this family. They got
What is it?
52 discounted meals.
Mm-hmm.
They started out in Fargo, North Dakota, where they lived, going to the discounted meals there. Then they kind of branched out.
Yes, they did.
They wound up going to Applebee's all over America. They were in Times Square once going for Applebee's, and they used up every single solitary one of their 52 tickets. It was a romance ticket. So you could have a romance dinner, a romantic dinner at a reasonable price. That was the thesis, Jim.
You know what I did a bunch of years ago when I was working at NECN? It's a variation on a theme. A coworker had about 100 free lunches at Friendly's. And on the way to
I used to love
NECN, I would
Friendly's.
drive to the Friendly's. I can't remember where it was on the way to NECN. And I would get the same cheeseburger, which was the
Big
size of your
beef-
head.
Wait a minute. It was the big beef cheeseburger special.
Listen to you.
With a vanilla fribble.
Exactly. And that's what I had before I went to work. So it's nothing like having like a 5,000 calorie lunch.
Yeah.
Friendly's is gone too,
Yeah,
right?
Friendly's
I
is
don't know
gone
what's
too. They
going on.
kind of deteriorated toward the end there, but for a while they were great. Tom and his
By the way, let me
brothers.
just, so we don't get sued.
What?
Red Lobster is in bankruptcy,
yes.
but it's still open during the process.
That's
So
right.
there you
That's
go.
what I just said.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you said it well. Is the show over or is it not over?
Tom
Where's
and his-
Jared?
Tom and East Providence. Thank you for calling.
Tom.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Excellent,
Fine,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, so for about 2 years during college in Rhode Island, I worked at an Applebee's and saw quite a few atrocities occur in the kitchen.
Oh, excellent. Let's hear them
like
all.
what?
I think the one that took the cake was when we made the Alfredo, the broccoli chicken Alfredo sauce.
Uh-huh.
What we did was we had like pre-cooked pasta. We put it in a plastic container, and then we had this styrofoam container of the Alfredo sauce that was all cold and congealed. And what you did was you put it all in the container with styrofoam and all. The styrofoam container is upside down, so it melts down into the pasta, which is gross into itself. But half the time we would take everything out of the microwave, and that styrofoam container was gone.
That's fabulous.
It was, I don't know if it was when it became a gas or a liquid or where it went, but
it was obliterated.
Every time we got an order for that, we'd all start looking at each other like, I don't know about if we feel right about even serving.
Yeah,
this
but
kind of
much
stuff.
more
So,
importantly, how did it taste with the styrofoam in it there, Tom?
I honestly, I couldn't even go there.
Yeah,
So you'll have to ask the customers that kept reordering it every time.
Yeah, what you don't know, I worked in restaurants for years, Tom too, and some of the things God, that went on. It was so disgusting. But you couldn't go. What were you going to do? Turn them in? I mean, you couldn't do anything about it, right?
Right, exactly. And I will say that as much as we're focusing on the fast food kind of stuff, there's plenty of quote unquote normal restaurants that do equally, kind of sketchy things on the background. So, it's not just the fast casual or whatever it's called, but really any place you got to kind of do a bit of homework and make sure.
Yeah, you do. But I have to say,
they're doing it legit.
The vast majority of restaurants that I have some familiarity with are pretty
How do you
serious
know?
about taking.
You're not in the back inspecting the kitchen?
Actually, if I may, Marjorie, as you know, I often hide out in the kitchen before I order, standing under a stove.
Yeah, Jim
Tom,
spends
thanks
a lot
for
of
an
time.
excellent call.
The restaurants in Boston know you a real. Thank you, Jim.
Can we give you an
spend
update?
An awful lot of time.
Well, I do
at these restaurants
because I like going to restaurants.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, I want to I'll do an update on Red Lobster. This is a USA Today in November. Red Lobster's CEO confirmed the $20 endless shrimp deal has ended permanently, and CEO said the shrimp promotion cost the business $11 million is all.
People were
and
stuffing
saddled
those
the obligation
shrimp down
with burdensome. Well, you love shrimp when it's really good. You could eat a couple hundred, couldn't you?
I don't eat shrimp anywhere but legal seafood.
Oh, you don't?
You know
Okay.
why?
No.
Because when you have them there, they're so good. Every place else is not.
How about the ones Roger brought you the other day from Thailand?
Well,
How great were they?
I should have said that. His shrimp, Roger Berkowitz shrimp.
Roger's Fish Company.
Wherever
yeah,
he
exactly.
gets those shrimp.
Thailand.
And Thailand. Maybe that's it. But they're the most incredible shrimp you ever had, and I can't. That's what I spend my money on when I have my party. That's right.
But can I say
those
one thing, by the
expensive
way?
Shrimp.
I have not been when Roger was owning Legal Seafood, I was never in the kitchen. I must admit, to my knowledge, he has never melted styrofoam into the shrimp when they were cooking them. By the way, I don't know if that's true what the guy said about Applebee's, but I can imagine.
I've told you before what they used to do if you annoyed the sous cook, who was the last guy that was in the line when you pick up the food when I worked at the Red Coach
Put
Grill.
a cigarette out in it?
Cigar, ash. You flip it, right? You shake it in your food.
Well, since
then
you're-
you had to take it out and mix it up and hope nobody noticed.
Since you're being honest, when I was a waiter and a busboy in the Catskills at Grossinger's, if someone said to me they were in a, this is horrible to admit, I shouldn't admit.
Don't admit it, Jim.
Too late.
Okay.
Well, okay, nothing horrible happened there. I was just, let's move on.
Kathy in Abington,
Hi,
thank you for
Kathy.
calling.
How you doing?
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
Long time listener.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to talk to you, Kathy. What's up?
Okay, I wanted to my story. My husband and I's favorite fast food restaurant is Wendy's.
Whoa.
And there's something special about this because it started with COVID, and they kept us fed when I ran out of ideas for what to have for dinner. So since then, almost 3 times a week we'll go there for lunch, but we sit in the car and we eat our 4 for $4 cheeseburger with
You know how to
a
live.
split.
Yeah.
We upgrade to Baconator fries for an extra 90 cents, and we listen to you.
There you go. Oh, Kathy.
An absolute routine for us. And when I can't do it, when something interrupts it, it kind of ruins my day.
That is a fabulous story. And by the way, to make you feel even better than you do about Wendy's, every time I've seen a rating by a credible
Lots of
institution
people.
of Wendy's,
Yeah.
McDonald's, Burger King, whatever else the big hamburger thing is, Wendy's comes out as the most healthy or the least unhealthy. So there you go.
Hey, Kathy.
That was a great call.
Did you say 4 cheeseburgers for $4?
4, yeah.
No, there used to be a special. I don't even think it's on the menu right. 4 for $4. You get 1 cheeseburger, 4 chicken nuggets, fries, and a drink. But for an extra 90 cents, you can upgrade to Baconator fries,
There you go.
which we do.
There you go.
Kathy, can I
that
tell
was
you
a
something?
great call.
You know how to live. I mean, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That was a beautiful call and a beautiful story. Thank you very much for sharing with us.
Did you read the text from Curious Ed watching on YouTube?
Yeah, explain it.
He said there was a restaurant called Floramos that ran these ads
Where
incessantly.
the meat falls off the bone.
Exactly, where the meat falls off the bone. You were right. And Pam from Dartmouth says she was at the Friendlies in Fall River Sunday. Oh, I guess the one in Fall River is still open. I went to the one in Somerset. I don't think there was one in Fall River when I was there. But anyway,
Can I, since I badmouth Applebee's,
Cute
I
Sunday
feel...
is still there.
Who?
The Cute Kids Sundays are still
Okay,
there.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, I'm here. I know you have been waiting for me forever.
Oh, that's funny.
I finally have
That's funny.
a few minutes to spend with you.
This is really.
I'm happy to join you a little bit early.
It's really, really, really funny.
I had about 19 texts. Jim is looking for you. Jim is looking for you.
Okay, good. Okay, Jared.
We'll talk to you
Jared.
soon.
You're
We'll talk
dead
to you
me.
soon. Thank you for checking in.
Okay, so that is really.
David in the car.
No. Before we go to David, since I badmouthed Applebee's, I want to redeem
Oh,
myself.
okay.
Here is country star Walker Hayes. You a fan of his?
I don't know him. No,
exactly.
I don't.
With his Applebee's theme smash hit from a few years back. It's called Fancy Like. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Exactly. And obviously there's a reference in the first sentence that's a little upsetting to me, but nevertheless we'll play it. Here is Walker Hayes singing Fancy Like.
Yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got
pretty great, actually.
That's great.
That's pretty great. That is Walker Hayes, who neither of us ever heard of, singing Fancy Like, which neither of us ever heard of.
I like that song.
I like it a lot,
Don't
too.
you?
877-301-8970. David, my apologies. Marjorie was going to you, and I interrupted. Here you are. Welcome. David.
You guys are just having way too much fun.
We are.
Today. You always make me smile.
Well, we're glad to hear that.
So I'm kind of a good boy, but I'm also a bad boy. And most people know me as a good boy.
Yeah.
I love going to Tata, the bakery. I love their salads. I love their food. They use fresh ingredients.
Yeah.
It's very little processed food. But when I want to be bad, and many people don't know this, oh, man, it's just hard to beat a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken with those cardboard mashed potatoes and that instant gravy, right? And you get the macaroni and cheese, and I don't think there's an honest ingredient in it. And you put lots of salt and pepper on it and down it.
Yeah, let me say two things, David. Don't
that
go
was
away.
beautifully articulated.
One, you mentioned tate. Flour is like another
Flour's
fabulous
great,
kind of thing. But let me tell you, my experience with Kentucky Fried Chicken my whole life is when you have, tell me if you disagree with this, David, you have one bite of fried chicken and grease starts coming out of every pore in your body. Have you had that experience?
It's true, but then you quickly gobble all the skin off where the grease is, and then you don't eat the rest of the chicken.
David, you know how to live, too. Another fabulous
David,
call.
that's a great one.
Now, Justice for All.
Too, I thought the forefirst. That's amazing. I'm going to have to go to Wendy's.
That's right. A lot of people like Wendy's, as Jim was saying before. We have a couple of other nominees.
Can I read this one first?
Jersey Mike's, Panera, Carrabba's, Maggiano's. That's right down here in Copley in Park Square. Maggiano's is a great Italian place.
It is?
Yes. I've never heard of Crabbleberries. I think that they're...
Crabbleberries?
Yeah, appleberries, Crabbleberries.
I don't think so.
I think they're making fun of
Okay,
me.
Justice for All is watching on YouTube, and I think they're talking. It used to be a sort of serious radio program. It seems to have gone downhill. What do you say to Justice for All there?
Well, I would say that at the end of the show, we have to have something that's a little frivolous, because otherwise...
What's frivolous about this?
I couldn't make it through the day. There you go.
By the way, someone just said, I don't know who told, Jamie, did you type that?
Barcelona. Yeah,
Barcelona. They have that's a
tapas place. So
but isn't that a chain?
Yeah, it's a chain, but I wouldn't say it's a. These are talking about mid-range chains.
Well,
that
who
are
cares?
Kind of
I mean,
cheaper.
Chain.
I think Barcelona, you wouldn't say is a cheap place to eat, but
No,
it's a great place to eat.
It's an affordable place to eat.
Well, it's not an arm and a leg.
You know what the only problem with Barcelona, in my experience, is?
What?
There's no unlimited shrimp. That is the. Can you imagine going to a place? Well, you don't eat that much shrimp. Forget about that.
The 99 restaurant. A lot of people like the 99 restaurant. From Sheila says, great buffalo chicken there. And Dave and Buster's Food and Games. You ever heard of that?
No.
No, neither have I.
Okay, let's take some calls.
A lot of people are up on the ground round, though. They're very excited. Flour, bakery, Clover Food Lab, people like that.
Clover's good, too, yeah.
Chipotle, people like that.
Fabulous, what do you call them? I wanted to see if you're paying attention. Lennon's.
At where?
At Clover.
Oh, okay. Fabulous
Falafels. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Lennon's, though, your next one. Well, that's sort of a chain, too, actually, isn't it, of course? It's got a bunch of restaurants. What's a chain? What is a chain?
Well,
How many do you have to be a chain?
I don't know, but it's many different restaurants operating under one same name. That would be my definition.
By the way, if Jared had been here when he was supposed to be a half hour ago, we could have asked him what a chain was, and he probably could answer, but he didn't show up.
Vinny Testa's, all the good ones closed. That's a good point.
did?
You used to be able to go to Vinny Testa's and get half of a thing of garlic cloves with like about 20 garlic cloves and put them on the bread. And you would eat so much garlic that for days the garlic would be coming out of your pores of your skin.
You know what we forgot also? IHOP. That's a chain.
IHOP. Spent a lot of time at IHOP.
So have I.
Pigs and blankets. Doesn't get much better than
You
that,
ever just
Jim.
drink the syrup directly when you were younger?
Well, you could. You had many different flavors.
Blueberry.
The blueberry, the strawberry, the plain old maple syrup.
It's unbelievable.
And thank goodness we don't have to pay $50 for maple syrup because you have another month before the tariffs
You know what
come
I
from
think,
Canada
Marjorie?
come
I think
back.
our show is going downhill. Let's go to Len and Stowe. You're on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie Egan and me, Jim Browdy. Hi.
Hi. I hope I don't bring the show down even further with this story.
I don't think you can.
We hope you do.
Okay,
We
good.
hope you do, Len.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Len.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try. Well, this is not a romance story. It's not even a bromance story.
Oh.
It's a dog man story.
Oh.
My dog Yoda and I, we love to go through the McDonald's drive-thru and split a Happy Meal together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, well,
That's a good one.
One caveat, he does not get the French fries.
What does he
those are
get?
Bad for his stomach.
What does he get?
He gets part of my hamburger, and then I got another hamburger, and we split that.
Now-
And I take off any of the condiments, no onions. You never want onions for a
dogs
dog.
don't
No. That's right.
Now,
They're
let me
bad.
ask you, Len, we've had this discussion in the past. We had this discussion when our show started going downhill, and we haven't gotten back to it lately. Do you feel it's inappropriate for an adult to order a Happy Meal?
Well, I have to say no because I order them.
But you have no
and when
ethical conflict? You feel okay about that?
Well, you know what I do? You know, they have a little toy. So if I'm in the McDonald's and I see family and they have some children, I give the toy to the children.
That's a beautiful
So I think-
story. It's a little hard when
Yeah.
you're in the drive-through lane with your dog. But, Len, thank
No,
you
I
very
can't
much.
do it.
Jim.
No, I can't do it at the drive-thru.
Thank you
Len,
for an excellent
we
call.
forgot to mention the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. You ever been to the Cheesecake Factory?
Yes, I have. Not for a long time. Chick-fil-A, people like that, but they don't like it because they were anti-gay, and a lot of people don't like that. Cracker Barrel, that's mentioned.
Cheesecake Factory is, I would argue, the biggest menu at any restaurant in America. Would you agree with that?
Biggest menu. You're
And
overwhelmed.
the biggest portions.
Yeah, huge portions.
And do you know why America is one of the fattest nations on earth?
D'Angelo's.
Oh, that counts, I guess.
You know what
Was
they
that
make?
sort of, is that a
You know what's
restaurant?
good at D'Angelo's?
Tuna sub.
Tuna fish. They
yeah.
make really good tuna fish.
sub. Yeah. tuna
Usually
sub.
places make horrible
Do you get
tuna
pickles
fish.
on that or you don't?
No, I don't.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I would not.
Do you mind if I take a call?
No,
The
go
show's
ahead, go
almost
ahead.
over. And I think Jared, who wasn't here when he was supposed to be, is going to be joining us in 2 minutes. Jolie in Providence, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey.
Hi there. I'm an avid listener, first-time caller,
Unbelievable.
and I want to give a shout-out to Baja's.
What is Baja's?
Baja's is better than Chipotle.
Really? I never heard of
You
it.
And
go
what
in
kind of
there,
food is it?
you
What is
stand
it?
in line,
Yeah.
burritos, taco bowls, enchiladas. You go in there and they have bins of fresh beans, vegetables,
Whoa.
and you make up your burrito and you walk out of there with a burrito that weighs more than your left arm.
Oh, that's my kind of burrito. There's one in Natick. I just looked it up. Where do you go?
I go either in North Providence or Providence on Fair Street around Brown University.
Looks pretty good, actually. A lot of Rhode Island, a lot of Connecticut, and Worcester and Natick seem to be the Massachusetts.
Now,
hey, thanks for your
Wiley
first call,
from
Jolie. We appreciate it.
Newton says Bertucci's has changed their roles. No wonder so many of them have closed.
You know what I loved about Bertucci's,
That's
about
a tragedy.
the rolls?
How about Texas Roadhouse?
How did you feel when you went to Bertucci's and the person, you're always nervous, am I going to get enough rolls?
Yeah.
And the person always says to you, how many rolls do you want? And if you say 30, they'll
I
give
know.
you 30
It was
rolls.
the best.
And then they'll put butter in the bag too.
Yeah.
Did you ever just open the thing and press it against the roll in the car?
It would just
and
melt.
just eat it right in the car?
It would melt right on top of the rolls. They
How
were
good does
hot
that get?
rolls. They were great.
So
They
can I...
time for one more call?
No, but I want to be
sorry.
as nice as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, I'm not angry, but why weren't you here a half hour ago when you were supposed to be?
Yeah, so when I was hanging out with Alan, that would be Alan coming,
Yeah.
just hanging out here.
Excuse me. Sorry.
All of a sudden,
and my phone starts blowing up. So walk me through what happened. So it's 1 o'clock.
I'll tell you what. I can tell you what happened quickly. Marjorie has always screwed up the clock, and Marjorie screwed up the clock, and she mouthed to me, "The show is over."
No.
And I assumed she knew what she was talking about. So what I did was I said, "When is Jared coming on?" Because Marjorie misled me by saying the show is over. But I'm not going to bring that up. I'm not going to get into that.
Here's what happened.
I'm not.
I make a lot of mistakes. I'm the first to admit it. Someday we should play my blooper reel here from my previous incarnation at WGKK.
Actually, there are many blooper reels.
When I couldn't get the numbers right, I couldn't get Jim's name right. I've improved, actually. I'm improved.
You have, actually, yeah.
But so since I do make these mistakes, Jim is quick to point out when I've made one. When he makes a mistake, I really enjoy it, Jared. Really enjoy it. And he made a big one about a half hour ago. Big one.
I'm just going to take
really
this,
big.
I'm going to
big
take
time.
Big, huge. Yeah. I'm going to take this as Jim misses me. And Jim, you know what I'm going to do? Just like the parents with their kids, I'm going to have you can track my phone. So you'll always know where I am. And I'll always be very close to you.
Well, that is really sweet. I'll pass on that. Thank you very much.
No, it's already there.
Now, by the way, wait a second. You got us. Alan Cummings has now texted me. So can you quickly tell us what's on your show today?
Alan Cummings is on the show
fabulous.
today.
He's really fabulous.
We're going to talk traders and all fun stuff. Alien Weaponry, a thrash metal band from New Zealand who is dealing with indigenous issues in their music, but also just fabulous, crazy music. They're on the show. And then John Sayles, the independent filmmaker, turned novelist and screenwriter. He'll also be joining us.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, he did so many great movies. Thank you, Jared. That's very nice.
Thank you, Jared.
Well,
Thank you, Jared.
Okay.
And Jared from 115 thanks you, too.
Okay, fine. Goodbye.
Great to be with you.
Jared Bowen, listen
Jim
to
made
2
a
o'clock.
mistake, Jared.
Okay, can I?
Made a mistake.
Speaking of mistakes, Senator Todd Young of Indiana says he will support Tulsi Gabbard, which means it is very likely she gets out of the committee with her nomination as Director of National Intelligence.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Okay, we're done. Thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to see us at the Boston Public Library.
Yes.
You can keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast or check out our...
Coming up on 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, Greg Farisi here with you. Thanks for listening. In about 30 minutes, we'll enjoy Sasan's third violin concerto featuring Jinju Cho, and later, Schubert's Sixth Symphony. This is the Ying Quartet.